Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto handled multiple women in Highschool DxD Part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for Part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. Uzumaki Kushina laid on the ground crying sadly while holding her 40 minutes old son Naruto. It is funny how so much devastation was caused in so little time. She hated herself for her weakness. She trained so hard after Yuzu's destruction so that no one close to her would suffer again. Yet here she was, with her husband dead, and her son in even worse place. Unlike her stupidly optimistic husband, she had no hopes of Naruto having a good childhood. The only reason she had a normal childhood was because no one knew of her status as a Jinchuriki. And even then she was hated for being an Uzumaki, an outsider. She knew that the Sandaime wanted to tell the public about her status as Jinchuriki, even before she became a Jinchuriki. She didn't know the reason, but she knew it was not a good one. It was Uzumaki Mito who threatened Sandaime, and put a seal on him that would kill him if he even thought of telling someone about Kushina's status as Jinchuriki. Uzumaki Mito was fearsome even when she was older than a century and near death. That was why the only ones who knew about Kushina being the Jinchuriki of Kyuubi were those that she herself decides to tell, which were Namikaze Minato, Jiraiya, Senju Tsunade, Uchiha Mikoto, Hatake Kakashi, a few years after Rin's death. Of course, that didn't mean that more people didn't know the truth. People like Uchiha Madara and Orochimaru were easily able to deduce that Kushina was Kyuubi's Jinchuriki, considering that she was the only Uzumaki living in Konoha after Mito's death. She knew Hiruzen Sarutobi was not to be trusted. Mito warned her, and she believed her aunt's words completely. Unlike other nations, other clans, Uzumaki put family above everything, their mission, their village, and even their own lives. And perhaps that was exactly the reason that Yuzushiobikyo was the strongest ninja village even when it had no more population than a minor village. After all, every Uzumaki was their family, every member married in their family was family, and unlike the Hyuga scum they loved their branch family, the Terumi clan like family too. That was also one of the reasons why there was not a single missing ninja in the history of Yuzu, ever. But now Mito was gone, and Kushina was too weak to even move. All that she could do was try giving her final moments to her son. She knew it would not be as bad as other Jinchuriki have it. After all, there were others who would take care of her child. Naruto's godfather Jiraiya, his godmother Uchiha Mikoto, that boy who she loved like her own son Hatake Kakashi, and she was sure that when Tsunade hears about Naruto she will come running back to village to take care of him as well. Sadly, it was not just Minato who was overly optimistic in their family, but it would be too late by the time Uzumaki Kushina realized that. Kushina was so immersed in her own thoughts and looking at her son in her final moments that she was completely unaware of her surroundings. And that was why she was shocked when she heard a silky smooth and powerful voice booming behind her. Well, look what we have here. When she looked behind, she was shocked to see the Shinigami was still present there. She thought he would have gone after sealing the Kyuubi and taking Minato's soul with him. She was suddenly worried that it wanted to take more, perhaps even her soul, and though she had no problem getting tortured for eternity for being a worthless parent, she didn't want to shorten her final moments with her son. But when another voice spoke answering the first one, she realized it was not her that Shinigami was talking to. Death. Her words were short. There was no booming voice, no overbearing pressure exerted, but the power behind her words was so much more than that of Kyuubi and death combined. Uzumaki Kushina turned her head to the front to see the source of the voice and was shocked by what she saw. Standing in front of her was a girl who looked no more than 12 or 13-year-old. She had hair that were pitch black as if they were made from night sky itself, and her eyes were like twin voids. When she looked at her eyes, she felt that she would fall in the empty vastness of the universe. Her face was emotionless and apathetic, and her dress consisted of some sort of bizarre black skirt that was joined to a jacket. Worst part was that it was open from the front, and the girl had two black tapes in X shape over the place where her should be. There was also a dark purple obi ribbon hybrid wrapped around her stomach. There was also a purple ribbon on her neck. And finally there was a dark purple cloth hair band on her head that was doing a very bad job at holding her hair. Ouroboros office. The voice of Shinigami boomed behind her, but she didn't look back. She was too busy trying to understand the creature in front of her. Just a moment ago, when wine blew, she saw the girl's pointed ears that were hidden in her hairs before now, ears that reminded her of elves from children's stories. There was no heavy presence from the girl, rather it actually felt opposite. It felt as if the world ended at the girl. That the girl was the void given form. Even when there was no presence, she could tell that the girl in front of her was far more powerful than the 9 bijou combined. Uzumaki Kushina had no idea how right she was. She knew that there was no word such as Ouroboros in their language, but she knew it meant infinity. She didn't know why she knew this. Unknown to her, every word spoken between the two primordial gods in front of her were being translated for her to understand automatically. The two gods could stop that, but they didn't care what the mortal in front of them heard. Ho, title and name? I'd call you Pale Rider, Death, but you seems to have forgotten your horse at home. She would have giggled at the condescending tone the girl was speaking in, but the emotionless tone and face, not to mention the condition that she was in, stopped that thought. Hearing her words, Kushina realized that the girl's name was Ophis and her title was Ouroboros. She didn't know what kind of being would get a title like Infinite, but she definitely knew that it would be someone very strong. Perhaps the strongest. Oh, I didn't know you could actually joke, huh, Dragon God. Anyway, different universe, different personas. I am not like you three strongest existence. I actually know how to have fun. In one world I am the skeleton riding the horse, in another I am an old man wearing a suit riding pale car, and here I am a wraith that can only be seen by those who are close to death. Well, that answered some questions. A god. She was in presence of a fucking god. Well, she was in presence of Death God from the start, but now there was the god of dragons here too. Just awesome. Not to mention, if the Shinigami could be believed, which was quite easy considering who he was, then she was one of the three strongest existence. She wondered how close Kyubi was to that ranking. Kushina looked to the side and saw that Sandaime, and the few A and BU members that were around him were frozen. She didn't understand why they were frozen until she looked around and saw that the fires around them, the dust, even that tree which was in the middle of falling to the ground, were frozen. It didn't take her long to realize that time was frozen outside the barrier. Or maybe time was so much faster in the barrier that outside looked frozen. She knew that creating time-manipulating barrier was possible with few ninjutsu, but the two in front of her were gods. She wouldn't be surprised if they could actually freeze time of the whole world. You are talking a lot today, especially in presence of a human. I thought you would have already given your usual, humans being snarky bacteria speech already, or was it snarky protozoa? Kushina felt a bit of anger swell up in her at those words at first, but then she realized how humans look like ants to even Kyubi. She could definitely understand how humans were equivalent to bacteria to them. She pushed that anger down. She would definitely be killed like a bacteria if she did something stupid. To who? The dying women? Or do you think I'd give that speech to that child who can't even understand me? But enough about that. Why are you here? You have not left Dimension Gap in centuries. What changed now? Death's manner didn't change. Even though it sounded rude, both Death and Ophis knew that he was just curious. Well, I was bored, and I was just thinking which universe to visit when suddenly I felt two presents together. One was you, and the other I could not recognize. I felt as if I knew that presence, but I could not remember it. And so I came here to see what was going on, and saw that it was just a kitsune yokai rampaging. Now that I'm done with that, I'll be going around looking at things till I get bored and go to another univ. It was not a kitsune yokai. Kushina could barely see the anger on Ophis's face for being interrupted before it disappeared, being replaced with a barely visible hint of curiosity. It looked like a kitsune yokai. It was a fox, had 9 tails, the rabbit ears were strange, but I've seen stranger things, Ophis replied in calm voice. One would think that she was supporting her statement in their argument, but that was not true. She just wanted to understand why Death said what he said. Immortal existence was boring, and finding new things was quite exciting in the boring life of primordial gods such as herself. It was a piece of Trihexa, 666, and just like that all trace of curiosity evaporated, and then a little amount of amusement became visible on her face. Really now? That was quite pathetic if this is what remains of the mighty beast of Apocalypse, and it is actually quite disgusting how he is ruining the title of strongest existence by his weakness. The Death God shook his head and spoke in a tone that sounded condescending, as if he was talking to a stupid child. That was not Trihexa. How can you be so stupid? Don't you remember what you two did when he came to challenge you to a 2 versus 1 battle? Yes, I remember. He told us that he was going to beat us and eat us to take our power. We tore him into 666 pieces because I found his name stupid and threw him across the dimensions. So what? Are you telling me that it was just one of the 666 pieces? It was still weak. Look at it, sealed by just a human. First, it was not the human that sealed the beast. The human just summoned me, I sealed him. And no, it is not. The piece of Trihexa that came to this world became a tree, and started absorbing the power from this world using the nature. The tree was called Shinju by the people of this land, and so Death told the Infinity Dragon God about the story of Shinju and the Otsutsuki family, not caring that Kushina too was listening attentively to every word spoken about the true history of her world and creation of chakra. But the more she listened, the more she became sadder and sadder. Knowing that it was not the Rakuta Sennin and rather his mother who was the progenitor of chakra, the truth about Jubi and Shinju was exciting and astonishing, but finding out that her world was born on nothing but betrayal was devastating. She knew that love was important, but she was not stupid. She knew that if you gave a hug to an enemy you will not get anything more than a kunai to your neck. That was why, knowing that the Rakuta Sennin, who the shinobi treated as God, betrayed his mother and killed her together with his brother because of stupid thought that love would bring true peace, was disturbing to her. But the worst part was knowing that Hagoromo and Hamura were nothing more than hypocritical lying bastards. For all their talk of love and peace, instead of having both brothers Azura and Indra lead equally, Hagoromo chose one over another, and then didn't even try to make things right and rather let the brothers fight. Finding out that Uzumaki and Hyuga were descendants of Hamura was disturbing. To think she was related to those scum who enslaves their own brother, sister, and children made her want to vomit. After that, the truth of 9 Bija hit her even harder. Finding out that the 9 Bija were created by Hagoromo, who they treated like their father only for him to give them the impossible task of bringing peace to humans. And then hearing how the Bija were treated by the humans when they actually tried to fulfill their father's wish brought pain to her heart. Especially knowing that she too was one of those who saw Biju as nothing more a mass of chakra who had no intelligence. She now understood why Kyubi hated her so much, and the worst part was that she knew she would have been even worse if she was in his place. Ophis, on the other hand, was thinking completely different thing from Kushina. So, how powerful is this Kyubi in comparison to this Jubi? Ophis asked without any emotion in her voice. No one would be able to tell what her thoughts were just on her voice. Jubi is 4 times stronger than this Kyubi. But this Kyubi sealed in the boy is only half. The original Kyubi is almost at half strength of Jubi. This Shinigami answered easily. Kushina was shocked to know that the Kyubi was so powerful. So are you saying that if by some chance all the pieces of Trihexa were to combine, he'll be 3 times as strong as me and Great Red? Kushina's eyes widened at that thought. This Ophis girl is 444 times stronger than Kyubi? That was insane. Suddenly she was very worried about her existence. She knew she was going to die soon, but knowing how much powerful this goddess is, she was sure that even her soul be annihilated if she even twitched wrong and made her angry. Perhaps not. You didn't tore Trihexa into equal pieces, not to mention not every universe is same. Some universe may have weaker pieces, some may have even stronger. Ophis looked at Death, and then suddenly her eyes narrowed. Kushina, who was watching everything, could feel that something changed. Perhaps a killing intent, ki, that only gods could sense. Well, that was good. She was not sure if she would survive a ki from someone so powerful, even if it was not directed at her. And why are you telling me this, Death? I know you. No matter if it's another god, or any human, you never do something without a reason. Why did you tell me all that? Why did you seal that Kyubi in that child? I know that the human held no power over you. What are you planning? Kushina's eye widened as she heard those words. Of course, how could she be so foolish? Even if the Shiki Fujin could summon Death, why the hell would he help Minato? Why was he doing all this? She held her son tighter in her arms. What were they planning to do to her son? Well, there are a few reasons. The first is the same as yours. I am bored. Eternity of same thing over and over is quite exhausting, as you already know. The second part is that I don't want Trihexa to return, and if he does return, I want him to be defeated and gone again. He is not like most of us. He will not leave us alone and be happy with his powers. He will destroy us and any other thing in existence. And I can't reap new souls if everybody is dead, because no one will be born. Quite simple. This child is the same. He is special. Look at him. It's not even an hour after his birth, and he is in presence of 3 gods. Even if one of them is weak and sealed inside the boy, the Kyubi still holds piece of Trihexa divinity. And of course amusement. Even if the boy fails, even if you fail, it'll still be amusing to watch the mayhem before Trihexa destroys me too. The Shinigami answered truthfully, with a hint of amusement in his voice. Kushina was horrified. Was Death saying that her son was destined to fight this Jubi? Or even worse, this Trihexa? Was this what that masked Uchiha planning? Did he want to destroy the world by recreating Jubi by combining the 9 Bija? She could believe it too. Her best friend was Uchiha Mikoto, so she obviously knew the dark history of Uchiha, and their dark outlook on the world. The Uchiha are all so morbid that she would not be surprised if they destroyed the whole world if someone stole their candy when they were 5. So what? You sealed the Kyubi so that the boy will become powerful enough to fight Jubi? Is this your master plan? Or perhaps you would like to give him some gift as well? Perhaps to give him the ability to summon you like slave and do his dirty work? Yes and no. I sealed the QB inside him for making him powerful, but the most important reason is that because both QB and the boy will need each other, he'll have a hard life no matter what path is chosen. This boy will break the walls down, and became the first person in history to befriend QB. Forget befriending, the two will become so close that they'll be brothers. And yes, I do plan to gift the boy with something. But not yet, for now I'll only mark the boy, so that I can see his progress. If I'm wrong and he is just the same as other humans, then the boy will not get anything. But if I'm right, then perhaps I'll give him a few gifts. It'll certainly be interesting to watch how he uses the gifts I plan to give him. When Kushina heard Ophus's words, she wondered why she seems to hate her son so much. Or was it perhaps that Ophus hated all humans? Or maybe just looked down upon. A few minutes ago she would have been proud to be called human. But now, after hearing the things that humans could do to their own children, knowing the atrocities they commit daily, she too shared the belief that humans were mostly trash. Of course there were a few exceptions. Ophus looked silently at Death's face, and then turned her eyes towards their topic of discussion. The child looked so innocent sleeping like that in his mother's arms. His whisker marks looked cute, and there was a desire somewhere in her to rub those marks softly, but she ignored them. She then turned her eyes toward the child's mother. The love, worry, sadness, despair, and longing that she could see in the mother, as she held her child closely, made her a little sad for the mother. To give birth, to get love just to lose itself so soon. She couldn't even imagine how the mother felt. Fine. I'll do the same. If he proves himself worthy, maybe, just maybe, I will give him some power. And that too is only because I don't want that trash trihexa returning. And if this boy could destroy a few of them, then I'm fine with granting him some power. With those words, a pitch black snake formed from the tip of Ophus's finger. Kushina saw amazed as the snake dropped on the floor. It was a meter in length, and its eyes were violet just like Kushina's eyes and Ophus's hairband. She was shocked and hurriedly tried to turn away from the snake as it started crawling towards her. But she was weak and close to death, she couldn't even move. She watched in fear as the snake came closer and climbed her son's body, and suddenly the snake became a snake of ink on his body. It rolled itself around the 8 trigrams mark on Naruto's stomach and settled itself in the mark of Ouroboros. A snake biting its own tail. And then the snake disappeared as if absorbed by his skin. She breathed a sigh of relief as she saw that her son was in no discomfort. He didn't even wake up. That relief was soon washed away as Death kneeled in front of her. He extended his bony hands and rubbed her son's head softly. Everywhere his hand touched, Naruto's head glowed, for a few seconds, and then everything went back to normal. Death then stood up and spoke. My work is done. I'll be going now. Remember Uzumaki Naruto. Anyone can do a few push-ups and break rocks with a punch, but only the wise can gain true strength. And with those words, Death faded out of existence. Kushina didn't know why Death said that now. Even if Naruto could hear him, he still wouldn't remember it, but she threw the thought out of her mind. What Death said was true, and she wanted Naruto to always follow that rule. Ophus kept staring at her son for 5 more minutes, and then she turned around to leave. She started walking towards a hole that appeared in front of her, and Kushina kept watching as she spoke softly. Show me that my decision wasn't wrong. And with those words, Ophus disappeared along with the dimensional hole. The moment the hole faded, Kushina felt exhaustion hit her in full force. She saw things out of the barrier normal again, and realized time has returned to normal. She hugged her son tightly for one last time and kissed his forehead lovingly. She smiled at her son's peacefully sleeping face and spoke. As expected of my son. Getting blessed by 2 gods an hour after being born. I hope you become even greater than those 2 believed you would become, because I know you would easily become the kind and powerful man they thought you would be. Kushina softly rubbed her son's stomach where the invisible seal was. She spoke in soft voice. QB, I'm sorry for being a bitch to you. I didn't know any better, but that is no excuse. I should have at least tried to talk to you. I am so sorry. I don't understand how you feel, but perhaps Naruto will. You two are so similar, born from worthless father who only cared for humans and peace, not caring for a moment and sacrificing their own children for those who don't even deserve it. I am glad you'd be there for my son, just as I am happy my son will be there for you. I hope, with time, you can forgive me. By now Kushina's breathing was heavy and her eyelids were closing on their own. Tears started spilling out of her eyes as she spoke her to her son. I just wish that I was there, to see you grow up and do all those things with my own eyes, but always know my son, I'll always be watching over you. And with those words Uzumaki Kushina passed away, her body still sitting upright and holding her son protectively. Because even in death she would protect her son. Betrayal, hurt, disgust, despair, anger, those were the most prominent emotions that have been passing through Uzumaki Kushina for the past 5 years. She felt so much pain as she looked at her beloved son's sleeping form. He was almost 5-year-old now. His hair has grown up to be a golden spiky mess, just like Minato. Oh, how she hated that man. How she hated this village, and everyone who lived in it. She didn't know how long it took, but after taking her final breath she woke up again. It must have been less than an hour though. It didn't take her long to realize her condition when she saw herself floating, her body being a little see-through and having an ethereal glow. She checked her surroundings when she saw the scenery moving at fast speed out of the corner of her eyes, and noticed that she was automatically following an ANBU that was carrying her son. She didn't realize it yet, but her love for her son was so strong that even after dying her soul didn't leave her son. At first she thought that this was afterlife, roaming around, watching your loved ones. That thought was soon proven wrong when she saw no other creatures such as herself in Konoha, the place where a lot of people died not too long ago. She even saw an injured person take his last breath in front of her, and she was able to see an ethereal mist come out of his mouth, and then disappear immediately. When she tried moving she realized that she could move around, but she couldn't go much further from her son. Not that she had any plans to do so. She was not going to let her son out of her sight for an instant. With those observations she realized that her condition wasn't normal. She wondered if it was some side effect of being in presence of two gods at her final moments, or maybe even a gift from death. She was just happy that she would be able to see her son grow and become the strong man she knew he would be. It wasn't even 3 hours later that she found out the truth. It was not a gift, it was a punishment, a curse. When she heard about how Jinchuriki are treated in other villages at first she was skeptical. After all, how could people treat children like that? Treat children so badly for something that they had no power over. Being treated like trash when it was these same people who were the reason of Jinchuriki's creation. Because these power-hungry scum were not satisfied with the power they had and wanted more. She was wrong, they could be worse, so much worse. She could only rage around, trying to kill him but just passing through no matter how much she tried, as she saw the doctor that was checking her son for injuries not too long ago poisoning her son. If it was not for Kyuubi's chakra her son would be dead. But it was still painful for him. She watched with eyes full of tears as she could do nothing while her child cried in pain as he burned in fever. She was right about Hiruzen. He did made a village-wide announcement of her son's status as Jinchuriki. Or rather he told them that Yondaime died sealing the Kyuubi inside a child. He didn't make them understand what Jinchuriki is and how every village has at least one, and are yet still standing. He didn't tell them that Naruto was hers and Minato's son. Rather he went and told them that the child was an orphan and they would give him the Uzumaki surname randomly. He didn't tell them that if her son died the Kyuubi would be free, and this time without Minato, and her being their Kyuubi will slaughter them all. It was a mayhem. It didn't even take 1 hour for civilians and shinobi alike to come trying to assassinate her son. Well, the shinobi tried to assassinate him. The civilians tried to torch the hospital on fire. She could only watch in horror and despair as the civilians and shinobi kept on shouting how the Yondaime gave his life to weaken the Kyuubi, and now they were going to finish it off, while the Anbu held them off. Is this what Konoha truly was? Not a single civilian lost their life in attack. The Kyuubi was out of the residential district when he appeared, and all the civilians were hurriedly sent to shelters. The only ones who actually lost their lives were some of the Jonins and Anbu who fought against the Kyuubi, and those two were minuscule because Minato came fast and teleported Kyuubi away. These people were not here for revenge for their loved ones or to destroy the Kyuubi. They were here to be seen as a hero, to do what the Yondaime couldn't. That was obvious because the only shinobi who attacked were Chunin and Genin in rank. All the other higher-rank ninja understood sealing enough to understand that the boy was not Kyuubi. But quite a lot of them lost their friends / lovers / father / mother / etc. Not to mention their beloved Yondaime, so they held hate for Kyuubi, and looking at her son reminded them of all they lost. That was why those Jonins and Anbu didn't try to harm her son, but they didn't try to help him as well. Kushina knew that and was a little thankful that at least not everyone will be after her son's life. But she knew her son was going to life a very hard life. The civilians didn't have the monopoly of the market, they had the complete ownership of it. Everything other than the missions was being held by civilians, even buying and selling of shinobi clothes and weapons was being held by civilians. She thought that things would calm down in a few months, maybe even a year. She was wrong, and she realized it next day when she overheard the announcement that civilian council was back, the same useless, arrogant and power-hungry civilian council that Minato disbanded after so much effort. And if that was not enough, Sandaime returned to being Hokage and put those 3 shit-stains Danzo, Hamura and Koharu as his advisors. It didn't take long for every single shop to ban the Kyuubi from using their things. When the hospital in which her son stayed stopped getting medicines because they didn't want Kyuubi to get its strength back, Sandaime finally had enough and made the rule that speaking the term Kyubi was banned even in their homes. It was when people started rioting all over the village that Sandaime said that Yondaime wanted the child to be treated as a hero for holding back the demon and thus saving their lives. After that things got a little bit calmer. But of course a little calmer than a maelstrom is still a storm. Though no one was outright trying to kill him, her son's life was still miserable. No one fed him until his voice got hoarse from crying. No one cleaned his clothes when he spoiled them until it became unbearable to them. She watched as he was starved. She watched as he was hurt, and no one helped him. She could just watch and watch as the people of Konoha showed their true colors. She watched as some people still shouted about killing the demon all around the village. She watched as civilians continued trying to murder her child, shouting about how they were going to avenge their Yondaime. It was only when someone got close enough to kill her son that the Sandaime publicly executed the man and told everyone that anyone trying to harm Konoha's citizen was a traitor and would be dealt as such. At least the assassination attempts were stopped. That was something she could be happy with. There were still a few attempts at his life, but those were easily stopped. She knew that those people weren't getting executed, but after 2 or 3 attempts they completely stopped. She thought that they finally realized that trying to assassinate her son was not worth the trouble. Unknown to her, the reason of the stopping of attempts at Naruto's life was something else entirely. After the first execution, the Sandaime didn't execute anyone else. He did send them in prison for a few months, however. But everyone that tried to harm Naruto, they were all mysteriously killed. Every single one of them. Even those who were in prison were brutally murdered and then hanged from the Yondaime's head on the village monument. It didn't take long for fear to settle in people's heart. No one even fed her son some milk, which caused him to have a very weak immune system. If it wasn't for Kyubi's chakra purging all diseases, her son would have already been dead. She had never been more disgusted to have worn Konoha's headband. She hated Konoha for hurting her son. She hated Minato, who actually believed that her son will be treated like a hero. She hated herself for being so stupid. Stupid enough to believe in wrong people. Once, just one time, Kakashi looked at her son and he ran out of the room. Why she believed that he had grown up she would never know. She knew he would be sad with their deaths, but she thought he would take care of Naruto instead of wallowing in self-pity. She was wrong. The first time Jiraiya came, she was sure that at least he would be better. He knew loss and pain and would be able to focus on more important things, like taking care of her son. He looked at him once and started crying. He just took a look at the seal and then ran away. She knew Jiraiya treated Minato as his own son since he didn't have any of his own and Minato was an orphan. But she didn't think he too would have same reaction. Jiraiya came every 6 months after that, and the same process repeated every time. And Mikoto, she never even came, ever. Last she heard of her, Mikoto was happily spending her days in Uchiha compound, being a proud mother of the youngest Sharingan user. Tsunade? She was not sure if Tsunade even knew of her son's existence. At that moment Kushina wondered what else she was blind to. What else obvious thing did she overlook? And then it came to her. How could she have been so stupid to not realize it? That first moment, that moment which connected Uzumaki Kushina and Namikaze Minato. That first moment that sealed her loyalty. How the hell did an academy student defeat 4 Kumo Jonin so easily? How the hell did 4 Jonin even enter and exit the village without getting caught? Especially with the sensing barrier that was created by Uzumaki Mito. How the hell did Kumo even realize her existence? She, who was just an academy student at the time, she was devastated when she realized the truth. It didn't matter if Minato was unaware and just thought himself lucky or if he was in the ruse as well. It was so obvious, using fake Kumo ninja to kidnap Uzumaki Kushina, then have the Rookie of the Year, that one child who had so much prospect of becoming the future Hokage, rescue her heroically. She fell hook, line and sinker. Mito told her to not trust Sandaime. Even though she didn't trust Sandaime, she never ever gave it much thought, thinking that as long as she was careful nothing bad would happen. How stupid it was for her to not realize that the man who was called the professor would try some other way to get to her. She would have wallowed in despair after realizing that, if not for her son. At first she wanted to run away, hide herself in some corner trying to forget everything. But then she wondered. It pained her just to look at her son being treated so horribly. How horrible it would be for him to feel that. And with that she continued being there, no matter how much it pained her heart to see son in pain, in some hope that he will be able to feel her warmth, to know that he was not alone and her mother was always there for him. And 6 months later her wish came true. Or maybe her wish was always true, she just didn't realize it. Her son was looking at her. He was looking directly at her. Still skeptical, she moved around a bit, and his eyes followed her intently. She started crying because of happiness at that very moment. Of course she stopped immediately as she saw her son started crying as well. She couldn't touch him, but he could still see her. That gave her all the power she needed. That gave her all the hope she needed. The moment she pushed her despair down in order to be there for her son, was the first time ethereal golden chains, which looked exactly like her adamantine sealing chains, appeared, which were wrapped around her and around her son. They appeared for barely a moment, and tightened more, and then disappeared. That was the day when she realized that it was not any god who kept her in this world, it was her love for her own son. She was happy to know that her love for her son was stronger than laws of the universe. In the past few years they appeared 2 to 3 more times to tighten more. She couldn't touch him and he too realized it, but she could see that he could hear her. Especially when he called her Kacha one day, a few days before he turned 1 year old. That was her happiest day since she had been born. She didn't actually knew why her son could see her. But she was pretty sure that it was death's influence. That would also explain why she was allowed to hear so much secret information. She was to prepare her son for the difficulties that would come his way into the future. At first she was a little angry at the 2 gods for making her son's life their amusement show, and influencing his life for their plans. But then she realized that she was much happier being pawn of 2 gods who actually believed that her son will become great, not to mention, they were also ready to bless her son. While on the other hand were Hiruzen, Konoha, that masked Uchiha, and others like him who only cared about themselves and would definitely use her son and then throw away his dead body in a ditch somewhere once they were done with it. She also spent a bit of time talking to Kyubi when her son was sleeping, apologizing to him. She didn't know if Kyubi could hear her or not, but she tried nonetheless. 4 years have passed since then. It was hard at first, Naruto just being a child, he called for her whenever he needed her. And when he did it in front of some people, that one of them started shouting that the Kyubi was controlling the brat, and he needed to be executed. That person was the second to be executed by Sandaime. His head touched the ground faster than the speed of rumor, and no one mentioned any such thing again. She didn't know what Hiruzen was planning for her child, but she knew one thing, he needed Naruto alive. And that was worrying for her. He had visited Naruto a few times after he turned 2.5, by then Naruto was intelligent enough that he could follow whatever his mother said to him, letter by letter. That was why Naruto never trusted the Sandaime no matter how much grandfatherly he acted. Though he didn't let Sandaime know that, and acted as Sandaime expected of him, with his mother's guidance. Kushina wanted her child to have a normal and loving childhood away from pain and suffering as much as possible. But when she saw the matron of the orphanage forgetting to give Naruto food, and rewarding children who bullied her son, she realized that there was only one real option for her: train and teach Naruto to defend himself, feed himself, to take care of himself. She started with teaching him how to read and write, then she taught him light exercises that would loosen his body. Once that was done, she started teaching him how to maneuver in small places, run swiftly and things like that, things that would let him move swiftly, dodge any bullies, things that would make it easy for him to hide easily using his small stature. She realized some things while she was teaching him. At first her son was not in any way intelligent, he was hard-working. And because he loved and believed in his mother entirely, he put his all into learning the things that she was teaching him. And that changed things. It was so hard for him to concentrate on things, but when he did do it, he easily surpassed children a few years older in the speed with which things were learnt. It didn't take her long to realize that it was the Uzumaki mental effect in an extreme level. She herself learned about it in Yuzu when she was just a child. Apparently, an Uzumaki's brain is structured a little bit differently than others, and that affects how it works. It was explained easily to children by using a simple example. If a normal person read a book, he could read one book at a speed of 20 pages per hour. An Uzumaki, on the other hand, could read 4 books at the same time, at the speed of 5 pages per hour. Now in the end both are reading at 20 pages per hour, but what matters is that Uzumaki are able to focus on multiple things simultaneously. This was one of the reasons Uzumaki were so great at Fuinjutsu. Even the most basic Fuinjutsu have multiple components working simultaneously, and Uzumaki could focus on quite a lot of them at the same time. As can be obviously noticed from this, if the Uzumaki is just reading one book, he will be slower than normal people, and because his mind is wandering on 3 other things, he will not be able to do very good as compared to others. This was the reason some Uzumaki were considered idiots and people with very less concentration. In Yuzu, children were taught how to focus all their brain power on one single task when they were young, and could thus overcome this. Her son was even more special case. He could probably read 10 books at the same time, each at 3 pages per hour, meaning that he could read 30 pages per hour, making him more stupid by both Uzumaki and normal standards if he couldn't focus. But when he was able to focus on one thing, he surpassed others by a good margin. And that was why he seemed so distracted sometimes and most intelligent child to have been born at others. Her son was special but not overly. There have been quite a few Uzumaki in the past who had the same case. Uzumaki Mito, and her little sister who was also Uzumaki Kushina's mother as well as Nidame Uzukage, their father who was Yuza's Shodame Uzukage, and a lot of other Uzumaki through the centuries had such brains. And they were all one of the best Fuinjutsu masters to be ever born. That thought made her happy. At least now she would be able to teach her son how to be a true Uzumaki because he could see and hear her. Some may think that Kushina would be a bit jealous being the only one in the family not having such prospect for being great Fuinjutsu mistress. She might have, if she had cared about anything other than dancing in happiness knowing that her son would surpass. Of course, this was nor fixed. Uzumaki as well as non-Uzumaki could train their brain to go both ways, not to mention brain do get more powerful the more they are used, especially chakra-powered brains. Thus, non-Uzumaki could train their brain to focus on multiple things at once, as Uzumaki proved for it to be possible to focus their brain on one task. That was why as soon as Kushina realized it she started teaching her son the same focusing techniques. And the result showed. In 2 weeks Naruto was learning at 3 times the speed he was before, and it was still getting better. And thus Kushina continued teaching her son. There were no books, no notes, no boards, she just traced shapes on ground and spoke things, and her son learned and learned. By the time her son was 4 he was already as intelligent as any other 7-year-old child. And she was proud of him. She never tried to change her son, she never tried to force her own thoughts and beliefs on her son, but she did gave him all the guidance and the intelligence she could to make his own decision, though she was also sad that she had to force him to grow up so that he could take care of himself. But the protection of her son was the most important thing to her. In the 5th year his learning continued, but his physical training also started. At first Kushina only made him do light exercise, but when she realized that because of Uzumaki heritage and Kyubi influence interacting and enhancing each other, he was recovering much faster than even normal Uzumaki, and so she increased his training. By the end of 5th year, her son was quite strong for his age. She was sure that he would be able to best 7-year-old purely based on physical performance, and 8-year-old children too, considering that 8-year-old children didn't train, and thus her son who knew how to dodge and punch properly will easily defeat them. He was also as intelligent as a 9-year-old as well. She knew she was being harsh, but she continued her son's training and learning continuously. And her sweet little child never complained. He always gave her that sweet angelic smile and told her that he would get stronger and smarter for his Kachan. She never told him about the Kyubi, his father, the 2 gods, or even how she died. She knew her son would hate Kyubi if she said that she was killed during Kyubi incident. Her son did ask why he was hated, or who and where his father was. Instead of lying she told him that, even though intelligent and wise beyond his years, her son was still a child, and he would not be able to truly understand the significance and weight of the truth. She told him that she will not lie and tell him the truth when he was 8, and her son listened. Today though was different. Today was special. Today was her son's birthday. Today was the day he would turn 5-year-old. Today was also the day that Kyubi was released, and the day she died. But there was something even more important than that, the gift that she had for her son. She smiled as she saw her son yawning and rubbing his eyes. He looked so cute when he slept, like an innocent child of his own age instead of a pained and sad boy that couldn't even hug his mother. That thoughts brought so much pain to her mind and soul, but her expression didn't change. Even when he was small her son started crying as soon as she was sad, so she always kept a smile whenever her son was awake and looking at her. She would be strong for her son and smile no much her heart is being torn apart. Good morning, son. Do you know what today is? Kushina spoke when he was done rubbing his eyes and was just getting up from his bed. It was a rule that Kushina would be the first one to speak because she was the only one skilled enough to check for Anbu hiding around her son, and thus letting him know that it was okay to talk openly. Good morning, Kachan. No, I don't. Why is it important? Naruto asked excitedly, smiling at his mother. Naruto knew his mother was dead. He understood what being dead meant. He didn't know why he could see his mother, but unlike his mother he didn't waste time thinking about it. All that mattered was she was here for him. His mother always kept saying that she was sorry for not being there to raise him, but she was wrong. She was here to raise him. He was very proud of his mother. She loved him so much that even after dying she didn't go away. He would have loved to have his mother alive, but he wasn't a petulant child. He understood that life wasn't fair. He was just happy with everything that he had. Of course that didn't mean that he didn't aim for more. Only fools get content with what they have, or even worse, believe themselves to be perfect. He would always aim for more. Aim to be stronger even after defeating strongest god with one punch. Aim to be smarter than the cleverest of the demons. Aim to have allies, friends, family, those who he could trust. He had a dream that he didn't tell even his mother. He was going to find a way to bring his mother back to life. His mother was everything to him. He couldn't even imagine how things would be if he didn't even have his mother. He would have already tried to kill himself. That was why he would be happy with what he had and aim for more, instead of crying over what could have been. He looked at his mother's beautiful face. He always wished he had the same eyes and hair as his mother. That was also one of his dreams, to change his eye and hair color. He knew many amazing things could be done with chakra. He was sure that he could do something as simple as changing hair color and eye color permanently. But the one thing that he wanted more than anything, he wanted to feel her warmth. He wanted to hug his mother. He wanted to be held by her. And he wanted to hold her so that he could be sure that his mother would never disappear. He knew his mother would never leave him, but who knows what could happen. There were no other ghosts around which she could learn from, and he was worried. Just because she didn't want to leave him doesn't mean others wouldn't try to take her from him. It was his biggest nightmare that the one thing he had in this world would also be taken away from him. That was one of the reasons he studied so hard, trained so hard. He wanted to have the power to protect everything that was precious to him, which was only his mother for now. But he knew that he would gain more things worth protecting in future. And he wanted to have enough intelligence to not be tricked, enough wisdom to not be fooled, enough strength that he could take anything that he wanted and not lose it. It should be noted that Uzumaki Naruto was not a mentally stable person, though in this world where 10-year children were taught how to kill efficiently, everyone was mentally unstable. Uzumaki Naruto, no matter which possible reality he was from, no matter which world he ends up in, would always be the same. He would love that which is precious to him. In one world it would have been a worthless village that didn't deserve an iota of his attention. At the end he would have become so messed up that doing paperwork would be more important than attending his daughter's birthday for him. So broken that the day his wife died, he would have spoken as the sad Hokage who lost the good and loyal Kunoichi instead of a man who lost his wife. So worthless that he would sacrifice his children for his village, just like his father before him. Here though he would love, and he would care for only those who actually deserve it. Those who loved him for who he truly is and not for that mask which would have one day became his reality. Another quality that made Naruto himself was his fatalistic determination to protect that which is precious to him. He would traverse heaven and hell, kill gods or bow to demons, create worlds or destroy universe. He would do anything and everything for those he loved, even if he destroyed himself in the process. He was shaken out of his thoughts when his mother knelt in front of him and touched his cheek. He couldn't actually feel her touch, nor could she feel his body, but both of them acted as if they could touch each other. Both of them loved each other too much to see pain on their face. Uzumaki Kushina smiled brightly and hugged her son. A few tears slid down her face as she whispered into his ear, "Today is your birthday, my son. Today is the day you came into this world and made me the happiest woman in the universe. Happy birthday, Naruto." Naruto's tears started flowing as he heard his mother. Today was the day his mother died as well. But he pushed down that sadness and put on a happy smile. Who cares if he couldn't feel her touch, or feel her warmth? He could see her, he could hear her. Even though he couldn't feel her, he knew she was and would always be there for him. And most importantly, he knew that he was loved. And in the end, that was all he needed. A few hours later, it was now 12 in the noon, Naruto was bathed and fed. It was hard at first to even be given enough food not to starve. The only reason he was living healthily was because of Kyuubi's effect on his metabolism. But now it was quite easy, though the matron of the orphanage tried to get him into trouble a lot and tried to punish him for things he didn't do. He was not so stupid to be pushed around anymore. When everyone was being distributed food, he would go and stand in line together with everyone else and not move until he was given food and in correct amount, no matter whatever they said. The matron hated him, but she was afraid if she would be the next one to end up mutilated, decorating the Hokage mountain, if she tried to push him around openly, and so she just didn't pay any attention to him. Naruto mostly stayed in his own room and only came for dinner, so they didn't see each other much anyway, and thus most considered Naruto to be not worth the trouble. Of course Naruto didn't know that they feared him. He did however knew that they hated him, and that they always tried to get him into trouble, so he tried as much as possible to not give them any chance. That was why when the door to his room opened and the matron stepped in, he knew that she was planning to get him into trouble regarding something, especially considering the fact that she did try to get him into trouble every time she came into his room. Currently he was laying on his bed reading a children's story book. There were ANBU watching his room right now, and so he needed to act normal. Most of the time he did some physical exercise disguised as an attempt by hyperactive child at trying hard to copy the cool ninja, or laid on his bed with a book in front of him and listened to his mother's lessons. He was doing the latter right now until the door opened. When the matron saw the book she scowled darkly. It was not the fact that he had the book that made her angry. Those books were put on table downstairs for kids to read and anyone could take them. What made her angry was the fact that even when no one taught him anything, the demon still managed to learn how to read and write on his own, and from the speed at which his eyes were roaming at the pages he was damn good at it too. She wanted so damn much for the demon to remain stupid and starved so that he would just die on his own or at least be easy to kill when the chance came. But the damn demon never falls. He became so damn immune to poisons that she adds to his food every time that he doesn't even get sick from anymore. But today was a happy day. Today they would get rid of the demon for good. She hid her smirk, or so she thought. It was easy to see her giddiness for Naruto, Kushina and the hidden ANBU. Brat, start packing your stuff. You're leaving this orphanage today. You're too old to stay here any longer. There are children who actually deserve this room more than you. By the time she stopped speaking she was fully smirking, not even trying to hide her happiness. Or maybe she thought that Naruto was as stupid as her and wouldn't notice it. She was so happy to know that the demon would suffer. That he would now starve and rot. He would be without a roof, without clothes, without blanket or bed to protect him. That the little piece of shit would die in the streets like the trash he is. Every single thought of his suffering stopped when she saw his face. The face that was morphed in shock till a few seconds ago suddenly turned to a massive grin. You're throwing me out? You're throwing me out? She was incredulous as he started jumping around the room happily. That's awesome. I'd finally get rid of this dump and live freely. The matron of the orphanage looked at the disgusting demon as he jumped around happily with increasing fury. This bastard. How dare he? They fed him and clothed him. It doesn't matter that they tried to poison the food as much as they could, or that everything given to him was old and barely more than a rag. In the end they did a kindness to even allow the trash to live, and here he was acting happy? He should be devastated, not happy. The truth was that Naruto was actually not happy. He was quite terrified as the matron told him that he was being kicked out of the orphanage. But before the terror could show on his face his mother spoke to him. Naruto! Don't change your expression, look shocked. Now don't worry. I overheard them when they talking about kicking us out a few days ago, and I have a plan. Now, show happiness and excitement, and jump around shouting how you're happy to leave this dump. He was calmed down somewhat as soon as his mother took command. If his mother had a plan then he was not much worried, or not too much worried at least. He did as he was told, and continued jumping around like a fool while laughing while still keeping a look at the matron from the corner of his eyes. He could see the rage growing uncontrollably inside her from her face. And the moment her mother shouted at him to stop moving, he followed her without any delay. Stop moving! Now step back. He didn't ask why and stepped back once, or rather he tried to. He was very near bed and the moment he tried to step back his thigh hit the bed and he fell backwards on it. But that was exactly what his mother wanted, he realized, as he saw a kitchen knife slice through air just where his head was a moment ago. He turned his eyes toward the matron and saw her looking at him with an air of palpable rage surrounding her. She looked at him with wide bloodshot eyes and shouted, You should be happy to at least be fed that poison, you demon. You should be terrified of being kicked out of here. You deserve to suffer for even living, you trash. And with that she tried to stab him in his heart using the knife, never once noticing the incoming blade of the ANBU standing being her, not realizing that she was dead, before her head even hit the floor. On the order of Hokage-sama. You're executed for attacking a citizen of Konoha. The ANBU member spoke without any emotion to the corpse of the still bleeding matron. He then turned toward Naruto and spoke in same voice. Are you okay? But Naruto, who was now sitting on his bed, was too busy staring at the still cooling corpse of his hated matron. He was still in shock at how close he was to actually dying if he was even a little slow. He turned his eyes upward as he saw his mother looking down on the head of the matron with hate in her eyes. Be happy that you got a swift, clean and painless death, you insect. For making my son's life miserable you deserve to be tortured eternally. Did you think we would leave this orphanage without making you pay for your crimes? No. Now go and rot in hell. But don't worry, your friends will be joining you soon enough. Hearing her words, Naruto finally put together the pieces. His mother knew that the matron would be angry and try to attack him if he said those words. His mother knew exactly how much and where he should move. She could see exactly how the matron would attack even before she attacked him, and she gave him order to move so that he would miss her barely, which also looked like such a huge accident. She knew the ANBU was there watching and manipulated everything perfectly, getting the matron killed without even lifting a finger herself. Someone else, someone normal, would be horrified of the sight of the headless corpse in front of them, especially knowing that they were the reason of the death. Naruto could only see the beautiful form of her mother mesmerized. This is what it means to be a true ninja, not those devastating jutsu, or rock-shattering punches. A terrifying focus, sharp mind and mastery of manipulation. That is all that a true ninja need to kill their enemies. He could only see the beautifulness of the scene, his glowing mother standing over the corpse of that woman who made his life miserable, her red hair contrasting with the blood all around the room, and her beautiful violet eyes shining with rage directed at those that would dare harm her beloved son. At that moment she looked like a goddess of vengeance. And his love for his mother grew so much more. Dimensional gap. A name that easily explains what kind of place it is. The place that connects everything. The infinite number of universe, and the infinite possible realities of every single universe. One would think that all the universes would be similar. They are wrong. A few of them are similar. After all universe starts from the same point of creation, and thus nearly every single universe is same in structure, at least till the point when sentient creatures are born. After that, choices made by those creatures decides the path that a universe will take. And that is the reason that so many universes will have a planet called Earth, being nearly similar in some things but different in other things completely. For example, there could exist one Earth where gods, demons and other such creatures are nothing more than fiction, while there exists a world completely similar where the same gods with same name and characteristics do exist. Of course, that is not always true. There are cases of things going in completely different direction, like a world where mages and warlocks were accepted and not burned on stakes, thus creating a world where magic blossomed. Creatures born of magic roamed the lands freely. Mages created guilds and had fun like everyone else. And so we realize the horrific endlessness of this void in which all these multiple universes float around like leaves in water, never even coming in contact with each other. If someone was to visit the dimensional gap, they would be shocked by the beauty of it. The way the sky changes color constantly without any order or without any set period of time, and the kaleidoscopic visions and patterns changing constantly all around them, watching glimpses of possible universes passing by. Of course, they would not actually be able to enjoy the beauty of this place. After all, dimensional gap is in the end a place where nothing exists. No gravity, no atmosphere, not even time itself exists in the dimensional gap, and thus that place is toxic to anyone beyond a certain level of power. And that level of power is that of a primordial god. Some highly powered being could enter the gap and move around, but prolonged exposure will destroy them, unless you could freely manipulate the dimension around you, but that is a talk for another time. Thus it was obvious that dimensional gap didn't have many visitors, and here in this endless dimensional gap we see a vision of Uzumaki Naruto packing his bag. It was not like he had much, if anything, in terms of belongings, and getting ready for leaving his orphanage behind for good. The vision, which was a live telecast, was being shown on the kaleidoscopic skies of dimensional gap, and unlike other sceneries passing by, it was not changing or moving away. And in front of that vision was Ouroboros Ophis, the infinity dragon god, laying in the air, floating around as if lying on an invisible floating bed, looking at the screen which was 20 times larger than a normal LCD. She looked the same as she did 5 years ago. Well, she looked the same 3 centuries ago as well, since she was truly immortal. Even her expression of apathy and emotionlessness looked the same, or rather it would look the same to anyone who has only seen her once or twice. Anyone who did know her closer, however, would easily realize that something was wrong with her. Sadly, no one knew her closer, so that was a moot point. Especially those who have seen her in the past 5 years. Because in the last 5 years she has not moved from this spot, not even blinked once. She did move a few times to take care of some important things, but we would find about that later. It was strange for Ophis. The world was boring, the sceneries were boring, and other creatures were not worth the effort of understanding. But this child that she marked, so that she could easily find him anywhere, and see him anytime, he was different. At first, after coming back to the dimensional gap 5 years ago, she thought herself stupid for even paying any attention to Death's words. What was the point? He would be same as everyone else, same as every single sentient creature. She, to whom there was no difference between a century and a second, she who napped for a few centuries when she got bored, to her he would pass away in an eye blink. Contrary to what others may believe, Ophis is not emotionless. She does feel emotion, they are just dulled a lot due to many millennia of disuse. Yet she still did it. She started watching him. She didn't know why she did it, she just did. After that, things went completely opposite to what she thought they would go like. She just couldn't stop herself from watching him every single moment, his sleeping face, his giggling face, even his tears, which made something stir in her cold and dark void of a heart. She could not stop watching every single one of his move and expression intently, especially his innocence. Whenever she looked at his innocent eyes in action, she felt a desire stir within herself, to take his innocence and make it hers, to have those innocent love-filled eyes gaze at her with those same emotion. She didn't know why this was happening. What was special about this child? She could also see that the child's mother didn't leave him after death. That shocked her, or at least shocked her enough to make her raise an eyebrow. So that mother's love is strong enough to defy death. That she could respect. She was a dragon after all. Even though she has never had a child of her own, all dragons had a deep desire to have hatchlings and very fierce protectiveness for that which they consider family. A dragon will not hurt a child of even a bitter enemy, no matter what. Unless you were a trash. Yes, even dragons have trash in their species. She certainly could remember a few dragons who would do anything for more power. Like those dragons in Earthland that were wiped out by that arrogant shit Acnologia nearly 370 years ago. Seriously, calling himself Dragon of Apocalypse? There is only one Dragon of Apocalypse, and Acnologia was neither great nor red. That is one of the reasons most dragons hate other creatures so much, especially those creatures who considered anything more important than their children. Days passed, and she just kept watching that boy without moving from the spot. She watched as he was ill-treated and hurt, and no one helped him. She watched as his mother tried to destroy everything around her in her rage, and unknown to her a dangerous emotion started taking hold of her. The day when someone got too close to kill him, that growing emotion broke all walls, and took over her entirely. How dare that trash try to kill him? I still do not understand him, and that insect tried to kill him and take away my object of observation. How dare that worthless human try to harm the creature she marked? How dare that human try to take away something that belonged to her? She saw Sandaime, third, though she didn't know anything about being Sandaime, or what Hokage, Fire Shadow, leader of ninja village that resides in Fire Country, even meant, execute the one who tried to harm her Naruto. Instead of satisfying her, it made her even more furious. How dare that trash let him die so easily? He should be torn apart inch by inch for daring to even think of harming what was her. The next time anyone tried to hurt him, she didn't waste any time on thinking and just took action. She went there personally and torn apart that trash, and she then left him at the top of that mountain to be seen by the world and know what would happen to anyone who would try to harm her Naruto. The humans proved their infinite stupidity by still trying to harm him. She dealt with them the same. She didn't just kill them, she made it utterly painful, and then she destroyed their souls. Those trash won't even get a chance to meet their loved ones in afterlife. After nearly a dozen deaths, things calmed down somewhat. Humans really didn't learn their place until someone showed it to them forcefully. Of course, they still tried to harm her Naruto without outright trying to kill him. That day she made herself invisible, and went to see him directly for the first time. She knew that the mother would do a good job in teaching Naruto how to protect himself. She could protect him from everything forever, but she could not protect him from himself. That could only be done by him. Not to mention, he was hers. There was no way that he was going to stay weak. Especially weak enough to be hurt by anything less than a god. So she went there and fed a snake of hers to him. Her snakes were not actually real snakes but just pure energy given shape. She focused that snake on just one part, to the strengthening the soul of the boy, and made it focus on his eyes. She then left the scene, no one knowing of her involvement. The next day she nodded satisfyingly as she saw Kushina crying with happiness because her son could see her. With this the mother would be able to teach her son, unknown to her, due to strengthening of soul, or in other words spirit, the part of chakra that decides the form. Naruto's intelligence and brain power grew a lot. Of course the snake was small, she didn't want him to explode due to overload of power after all, so the increase was not so much that it could be considered unfair, or even out of ordinary. He would just be smarter than most, which was not actually too hard considering how stupid most humans were. That was also the reason why Naruto could only see the spirit and not interact with them. He would have grown the ability to be able to see spirit when he matured enough due to his strengthened in, or in other words soul. But that was time she didn't have. Nor did she want to leave him stupid and undefended. She could have taken Naruto with her, but she didn't know much about raising children, nor anything about training. All that she could do was feed him more snakes. She didn't even know what this emotion of protectiveness towards Naruto even was. It was definitely not the protectiveness of a mother dragon, that was certain. So she left that job to Kushina, who was definitely more suited to it. And she was proud of her decision in the coming years as she saw Kushina train Naruto. There were still a few attempts at Naruto's life when things were too quiet for too long, and so she reminded those trash that just because she was quiet didn't mean that she was not watching over her Naruto. There were a lot of people that she wanted to throw in dimensional gap and watch them disintegrate atom by atom, like that bigoted matron who poisoned her Naruto's food, but she knew that they were not affecting him, and making him immune to poisons instead, which was a plus to her. She still wanted to disintegrate her though, but she knew that if she went on a rampage, Naruto would be hated even more, and maybe, just maybe, there might be 1 or 2 people in Konoha that would be suitable to be Naruto's allies. Not to mention, even though she hated seeing him in pain, Naruto will grow and become mature due to mental anguish, thus she held back, waiting for the day on which that matron would be punished. Thus watching as Kushina manipulated and got that whore killed was quite satisfying to her. It was also quite vicious. She would ask her to teach her Naruto how to manipulate his enemies into killing each other. Her Naruto really didn't need to get his hands dirty in taking out the trash. Others would do it for him. She would have still liked to make it painful and destroy her soul, but she was not going to go around wasting time on pathetic nobodies. Watching Naruto's expression of awe and love made her happy. Naruto would one day be a dragon, her dragon, and knowing that he wasn't weak of heart or a stupid love-preaching idiot made her happy. She didn't care if he showed kindness to anyone and everyone who deserved it, but showing it to people who did not deserve it was beyond disgusting to her. She would have beaten that stupidity out of him even if it made her heart clench even thinking of pain on his innocent face. She also didn't want him to go around hating everything in existence, though she had no problem if he wanted to destroy a universe of 2. She would rather like it more if he didn't give much thought to useless trash, and rather think more about enjoy his life spending with her. Looking at the way Konoha treated him reminded her of Ingram Manu. That was a horrible disaster that the humans brought upon themselves. Seriously, selecting a random innocent human one day and then blaming him for being the source of all their pain and anguish and naming him all the evils of the world? Thinking that as long as someone more evil than them existed that they would be allowed to get away with anything? Did those stupid humans actually think that kind of stupidity would work on gods? They had it coming when he accepted his condition and did become all the evil of the world and tore them apart. The fact that he ascended to divinity after that and became one of the first evil gods in existence was just icing on the cake. She really didn't want her Naruto to turn into that. She didn't want to see hate on his face, especially not directed at her. If he asked her, where was she when he needed her, if she was a god? That was why she watched around to make sure that no stupid human got any too stupid ideas. Her little soul searching done, she paid attention back to the vision showing Naruto, with his mother floating around him like always, going around the village looking at things. She saw as the people glared at her Naruto, looked at him with disgust and hate. How dare those trash? If anyone that was disgusting, it was them. But her strong-willed Naruto didn't even look at those people with more than a cursory glance, looked at them as if they were lower than trash, which they were. That made her happy. Her dragon would get allies, she knew that, but only strong and smart ones. She would not allow him to have those weak and pathetic waste of nature as his friends. And thus when she saw Naruto not being sad for not getting their attention, she was happy and satisfied. She saw as he went around the village looking at different things, different places, the academy, the Hokage Tower, the Hokage Monument, the park, the shopping district, even the red light district, the shinobi, ninja, clan houses. He didn't try to go anywhere even close to civilian houses knowing the kind of people they were. Of course Office didn't know what those places were. It was at 6 p.m. when the sun was setting down did they stop their sightseeing and started walking toward a certain direction. It was at that moment that Office noticed that some civilians, and a few shinobi were following Naruto, while keeping their distance. She narrowed her eyes when she saw that a few of the civilians had kitchen knives and bats, and such things with them. Only a truly stupid and pathetic waste of brain would not realize what this mob was planning instantly. Apparently these stupid people didn't learn from their mistake. Olfa stood up from her position and got ready. She will hope that no one would try something stupid, but she knew better than hoping for impossible. Perhaps today, she would get to meet her dragon, for the first time, face to face. That thought brought a smile on her face, or as much smile as the most emotionless god in existence can get. She would be meeting her Naruto, and from this moment, she would be with her Naruto, helping him every single step of the way as he forges his path to greatness. Today would be the day that she held him. Today would be the day that he held her. He would be the fire that burns and melts her frozen heart. And she would be the void that would take his troubles, sadness, and his enemies into itself, and give him only happiness and peace. It would be glorious. Drip, 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 drip. He hated that noise. He hated this fucking place. What the hell was wrong with this place anyway? Seriously, a sewer? He knew how the child was being treated, but seriously? For his mindscape to be a fucking sewer? At least it's not as worse as it was in the child's first 6 months. It was fucking madness. The pipes were leaking water like a river. There was so much fucking water that if he was to lay on the ground to sleep he would be under the fucking water. At least it didn't stink, so that was good. Well, at least it's not that bad anymore. Shit, he was brooding again. Of course he will deny it with his last breath to anyone else. The great Kyubi no Kitsune, nine-tailed fox, Kurama didn't brood. It of course had nothing to do with the fact that Uchiha were so famous, brooders. Or what he would do to get a chance to be chained to that boiling floating rock again. That beautiful fire and lava-filled mindscape of Uzumaki Kushina. He hated the women of course, for chaining him like that in there. But still he quite enjoyed the scenery. He liked watching fire and lava. His element was actually wind and lightning, but there was something nice about fire and lave. He didn't actually care much about those pathetic flesh bags as he liked to call them. He was quite content with just sleeping around and doing nothing. Well, there is something that I do like more than sleeping, he thought pervertedly as he remembered his little sister Nibi no Bakaniko, two-tailed demon cat, Matatabi's fiery ass wrapped tightly around his. Well, you get the idea. What? Did you think that Nibi was the only one who was a pervert? All the 9 siblings are perverts of highest order. Yes, even the always serious Hachibi no Ushioni, 8-tailed ox demon, Ryuki. Where do you think the idea for tentacle sex came for a human? The desire for death and destruction, he guessed, was because of Jubi, 10 tails. He knew he was special, even when compared to his other siblings. He had half the chakra of that of Jubi. At first he thought it was because he was special to his father. How stupid of him. He still didn't know the real reason, but he guessed that he was the place where his father put all the remains of Jubi that he couldn't seal completely. The desire of rage, destruction and mayhem probably came from there. He didn't know that he had unnatural hate against humans. At first he thought that it was because his father cared more for these humans instead of him, even on his deathbed. Later he thought it was because of their destructive and disgusting tendencies, and then he thought it was because these humans were using his siblings as power-ups in their stupid wars. It was quite a few centuries later he figured out that though those things did increase his hate, there was always a part of hate that didn't come from him. It was of course a lot less than what he believed Jubi's hate to be. He figured that the residual emotions that he had were that which his father couldn't seal away in the husk of Jubi, Gerumazu. It didn't matter now though. He hated humans on his own. He was still ready to give them a chance a few centuries ago, of course. He did made a promise after all. And he never goes back on his words. But then Madara happened. At first, after being given his purpose by his father, all 9 siblings went out to make his dream a reality. Well, we all know how that turned out. What most don't know is that Kyubi didn't even try to spread peace to human. The reason for that was obvious. Kyubi didn't need to waste all that time on such a futile endeavor. He could feel the stupidity, the arrogance, the malice, the hate, 10 miles away. It was disgusting. It was apparently the final product of his father's dream. That emotion sensing of his. It was the ultimate way for humans to understand each other. He scoffed at that thought. Most human would go into coma from sensing all that pain and suffering, and those who survived would rather use this power for their own benefit rather than to understand one another. And why the hell would anyone want to truly understand humans anyway? He understood them, and he hated them, so he left. Got far from the humans. He of course did venture out a lot, mostly to meet his siblings, and of course when the amount of malice increased so much that even his head started to hurt. After that, a few Bijudama, tailed bee spam, took care of that headache problem, and then one day, he suddenly found himself in another location. Staring at those eyes that reminded him so much of his stepbrother Atsutsuki Indra, the one who sowed the seeds which destroyed his father's dream, by showing those useless humans that it was possible to use chakra to do something more than feeling each other's emotions, that it was possible to put others beneath yourself by wielding the power of elements, and after that it was one giant mayhem. He could see, feel and hear everything. He could hear as Madara, correctly, speculated that it may be possible to reach the sage's power by combining the blood of Azura and Indra's descendants. Of course he knew. Did you really think that not a single fucking Senju fell in love with an Uchiha in all these centuries? It was good that most of those people destroyed themselves and those around them to the point that all the knowledge was lost. Or he would have needed to wake up and take care of that problem himself. He wasn't much worried though. These humans were so fucking short-sighted that they didn't notice it. But the Bijou, they knew. The age of chakra was slowly coming to an end. Every newer generation that was born was weakened than their parent generation. Even Hagoromo and Hamura had no hope of ever defeating their mother if they fought one-on-one. This Manjikyu, MS, and Eternal Manjikyu Sharingan, EMS, was the most prominent proof. Did these Uchiha ever wonder whose eyes Indra implanted considering he was the first Uchiha? The answer was he didn't. His eyes evolved to MS with training just like any other stage of Sharingan. There was of course emotional turmoil required, but he didn't have to kill anyone close to him. And the MS was perfect. There was no need to transplant any eyes unless you accidentally destroyed them, of course. 3 or 4 generations later, the awakening of MS became harder and harder and at one point became impossible without any painful emotion to trigger its awakening. We all know what those megalomaniac Uchiha did after that. One single Uchiha awakened his MS after accidentally killing someone close to him, and then every single Uchiha ran after their closest brother/father/mother/sister/ etc. to get himself a MS. 1 or 2 generations after that, MS actually became poisonous to its own user and started to take away the eyesight with every use. In the end, Uchiha needed to implant the MS of some blood relative and achieve true MS that was by then named EMS. The reason for that was because the toxin generated by MS was only poisonous to its own user, so changing user helped. The reason for only implanting it from blood relative was that every Uchiha's MS was different, and thus there was a very high chance of a transplanted eye reacting badly with another, but blood relatives had closer internal structure so implanting was easier. There was of course always a chance for MS from a complete stranger to merge properly. Just like there was a chance for even twins having incompatible MS. The reason he knew all that was simple. Uchiha loved their evil monologue. What he didn't know was why in the fucking hell did not a single fucking Uchiha ever thought to put themselves in a genjutsu, illusion technique, and then kill a family member, instead of going around killing the real ones. He was even more baffled when the Uchiha killed another family member to take their MS for implanting. Did they ever think that they could have just gone to another and said, "Hey bro, here take my eyes, give me yours"? Or were these Uchiha simply not capable of thinking about anything other than killing their family members? Even he loved his siblings, even though sometimes they traded barbs, they still loved each other. How would they enjoy their whole family orgy parties if they didn't love each other? There were a lot of other examples, and all of them pointed towards the fact that the potency of chakra in humans was slowly becoming weaker and weaker. He suspected that humans would lose their ability to manipulate their chakra in sometimes close to next 5 centuries. He heard how Madara was walking the same path as his ancestor Indra, and how this Hashirama walked the path shared by his ancestor Azura and his father Hagoromo. He was quite shocked when he found that Hashirama's Mokutan, would release, had the same characteristics of absorbing as Jubi's outer path chains. They were still weak as fuck though. And they could only absorb, they couldn't seal the chakra nor body. They probably couldn't control the bodies of those they were stabbed into, and this Hashirama was so weak that he could not even absorb his power into himself without killing himself. Hashirama could barely make them dissipate into the nature without killing himself. It was so damn stupid, such stupidly weak humans, with powers that were tailored specifically to take down a Biju, fighting against him. They barely had more chakra than Matatabi. Just one fucking full-powered Bijudama, tailed beast bomb of his, and Madara's perfect Susanoo and Hashirama's Shinsesenju, true several thousand hands, would turn to dust. If he wasn't being controlled and could fight himself, he would have easily torn apart Hashirama himself. He would have also torn apart Madara easily if he wasn't put in the damn illusion so damn fast. He didn't even have to avoid looking in the eye, all that he needed to do was keep his chakra fluctuating randomly, and fast enough that the genjutsu could not take hold in the first place. He was quite happy when he saw Madara get killed. He wanted to shout to Hashirama to destroy the fucking eyes, before the Asanage that the swirly-eyed trash probably already invoked before coming to battle could start, and bring him back. But Hashirama was keeping his mouth covered with his Mokutan. Of course, who would want to listen to the wisdom of a millennia-old fox? And then came the fucking Uzumaki. He actually quite liked Uzumaki. They were the only Otsutsuki descendant that were not a massive disappointment, and their hair was red. He could never hate a fellow red lover. But he could see that this Uzumaki was a lot different. She was more Senju in personality. It was proved true when she sealed him into herself. And then called him same things that the trash Madara did. That was so hypocritical that he couldn't even believe that these trash were in any way related to his father. Seriously, calling him a mass of chakra was fine, it was true anyway, but calling him mass of chakra without any intelligence? Now that was stupid. Did these humans even hear themselves? If there was anyone that was stupid, it was definitely not him. Did these Senju had a brain deficiency? Fight to death with an Uchiha, and then believe what they said with face value? Seriously? Or was it perhaps the whole humanity that was this stupid? The way they were explaining their own techniques to each other sure was pointing more toward overall stupidity. His father's dream sure seemed far away. Mito's life was exciting to say the least. But that is a talk for another time. In a way he actually enjoyed the stay, he couldn't stretch his legs much, but the drama these humans' lives could provide was good in itself to say the least. He could also sleep as much as he wanted. And of course his emotion sensing was turned off so he didn't have to regularly feel human stupidity, so that was awesome. He was quite sad to hear that the Uzumaki got wiped out, and quite happy too. These trash probably didn't know but only the strong body of a pure-blood Uzumaki would be able to hold him. A half-blooded Uzumaki could do it too, if he was grown up and thus had a stronger body. If the half-blooded Uzumaki was infant, it would probably be able to hold barely half of his power. So when Uzumaki Kushina appeared, he face-palmed and resigned himself to nearly 2 more centuries of not stretching his legs. Why the hell did these Uzumaki had to live so long anyway? Mito didn't actually live whole 2 centuries, and he was not even sealed in her during her first 40 years anyway, but still, he was quite pissed when Mito passed her views on how to treat your tenant poorly to Kushina, and Kushina proved to be a good student by chaining him to a boiling rock that was floating in fucking sky. Well, it was a mindscape, but still, seriously? Counteracting the hatred that he constantly tried to force into her by falling in love with that wet noodle was the height of stupidity. The fact that the so-called wet noodle, Namikaze Minato, was so much senju in personality was even worse. He quite liked her fiery personality and her fierceness. There were a few traces of senju stupidity, but she was mostly Uzumaki in personality, so that was a plus point. He might have actually quite liked her if things had been different. But things weren't different, and then that day came. Now that he thinks back to it, he did become quite arrogant in all the years of peaceful sleeping and steamy back massages. Seriously, the only thing that hurt from being chained and impaled on that boiling rock was his pride. So he was quite pissed when another swirly-eyed bastard came and put him into an illusion before he could even realize what was happening. Again. He was still happy though. Kushina was dying and there was no Uzumaki alive as far as he was concerned. There was this Naruto brat that was just born, but he was infant and half Uzumaki. So he was completely shocked out of his arrogance and happiness when the pathetic wet noodle Minato actually summoned the fucking death god to tear him apart and seal half of that piece in himself and the rest inside his son. It was no wonder he tried to stab the child. After being shoved into the seal with the grace of a meteor, Kyubi huffed angrily. Pathetic wet noodle, pathetic red-headed MILF and the not-so-pathetic Shinigami, ruining his life and taking his freedom. And damn you fucking Madara for getting him in this mess. Well, at least he didn't live inside Kushina for 2 centuries, so that was good. And then everything changed. He was just planning to go to sleep when he heard that voice. Naruto was sleeping so he couldn't see anything but he could hear everything. And damn, the things he heard were shocking. He knew his father was big on love and peace. But to find that he killed his own mother? And then hearing how he was nothing more than a manipulating old man, well, his respect dropped a lot. It was always a sore spot for him to remember that his father's last moments were spent talking about bringing peace to humans instead of talking to his 9 crying children. He didn't even talk about Indra and Azura who were in the middle of a fucking death match while their father was dying. Seriously, was the whole Otsutsuki family nuts? He was glad that he didn't share actual blood with him, if that was true. Finding out how the Shinju was 1 out of 666 pieces of a primordial god was shocking to say the least. He was suddenly terrified for his existence when he realized that an existence on same level was outside near his new jail. He didn't need to know her powers to realize that she could probably destroy him for good, immortal or not. Hearing Death say that this Naruto would one day be close as brother to him made him scoff at the idea. But there was a small part of him that hoped that it was true. He would never admit that though. Even if he was threatened with death he would never admit it. But he was lonely. There were his siblings at first, but now they were all sealed. In the last 1 or 2 centuries, even before he was sealed, he didn't meet anyone who wanted anything other than use his power for their purpose. When Kushina spent a few of her final moments speaking to him, he was shocked. Hearing her heartfelt apology made his anger for her lessen greatly. What the hell was point of hating a dying woman full of regrets anyway? And she was just ignorant little child that believed her ignorant aunt. Watching the way Naruto was treated reignited his hate for humanity. And the way they continued their stupidity even after that Sandaime trash, who was definitely planning something nefarious, executed that insect who tried to kill Naruto increased his hate far beyond the previous levels. How utterly disgusting are these humans to try to kill an innocent child? Yes, he was a demon, but even he was utterly disgusted and horrified at how far the humans could fall. He has killed his fair share of innocents, sure, but he never tried to do it without reason or desperation. Even less for any innocent child. That was the moment that every last speck of desire to fulfill his father's dream was erased. These humans didn't deserve peace. They deserved to be wiped out. At that moment another thought occurred to him. If these trash wanted to see Naruto as a demon so much, then they would get a demon. It was much better than being a human anyway. The Shinigami said that Naruto and he would be as close as sibling anyway. 6 months later, when he could one day suddenly see a floating and glowing Kushina, he was so shocked that he could barely process a thought for one whole week. Watching how Kushina did everything in her power to make her son's life even a little bit better made him even angrier at those pathetic humans. A mother defied death to stay with her son, and these trash couldn't even get over their impotent rage. It wasn't even rage most of the time. Most of these people came with some stupid thought that they would be treated as hero for killing the boy. Seriously, trapping the powerless QB in mortal flesh? Did they even hear themselves? He could hear when Kushina cried every night after her son went to sleep and apologized to Naruto for being a bad mother. He also heard her when she spoke to him, thanking him most of the time for being there for her son. She also said sorry a lot of times and spoke of how she would make sure her son would not be prejudiced and ignorant like she was. He felt his last bit of anger for her fade away with those heartfelt apologies. Even he could feel her pain and loss and felt sad for her and Naruto. He was demon, not like those trash humans, who would happily cook and eat their firstborn if they were hungry enough, and thus he decided to make his thought of turning Naruto into a demon a reality. Which were also going to help Kushina raise Naruto in his own way. He channeled his chakra as much as possible, with the seal getting in the way, and allowed it to roam around Naruto. It was not much, but these low amounts now would make him resistant to its toxic effects, and allow him to handle more of his chakra easily in future. The seal was also getting weaker slowly, so that was a good thing. At first he wanted to leave and be at peace, but now he wanted to see Naruto grow up. He wanted to be there to give him guidance and strength. It would also be quite funny if Naruto and he got close. He would certainly love to see the look on Yandame's face if he found that Naruto and he were close. He could also see that this was affecting his body and soul. He was more intelligent, and was growing more intelligent day by day. And his body was getting stronger as well. He could also sense a few powers awakening inside of Naruto. He couldn't recognize most of them, because they were so weak, but a few of them did feel familiar. The only one he could recognize now was the feeling of the same dense chakra that allowed Kushina to use her adamantine sealing chakra chains. He could not forget that so soon. So he helped in his own way from the inside, changing and strengthening the body, while his mother gave him knowledge on how to use the power that would be available to him one day. There were so many things that were wrong with his body from the start. Because of lack of vaccinations, mother's nutritious milk, and any good food, his immune system was shit. Well, almost his whole body was in shit condition. It was good that he continued eating the food even if it was poisoned. The poison was easy enough for him to take care of, and he could increase the nutrients exponentially in the food by mixing his chakra in it. Naruto also got very high poison resistance, so that was good as well. But even he wouldn't be able to help if there was no food in the first place in his system. Even with that, it still took 4 years for him to bring him back to the condition that a normal Uzumaki would be at the age of 4. He was glad that Kushina didn't start his physical training before 4. He didn't want to redirect the meager chakra that he could pass through the seal to healing broken bones or bruises, when there was more important things to do. By this time he could recognize another ability that was hidden inside Naruto. He knew that there was a chance of it awakening in him since Kushina too held that DNA in her blood. That didn't mean he had to like it though in the end it won't matter. Even if Naruto was to awaken that bloodline, he would still be the same person, and he was definitely not planning to let the only person he ever liked to turn homicidal broody emo. The 5th year was spent on spreading chakra equally in all parts of his body. He was shocked to see how Uzumaki's inherent strong bodies and healing powers combined with his chakra strengthened Naruto so fast. It took 4 years for him to heal Naruto and made his body as strong as any other 4-year-old Uzumaki, and in 1 year Naruto become as strong as a 7-year-old Uzumaki. That also made him realize just how much damage is done to a child's body if no one is there to look after him. It was quite vindicating for him to watch that pathetic waste of air and food getting her head removed. He was also happy to see that Kushina still retained her fierceness, and now instead of acting like an airhead as she mostly did, she was showing her true ruthless side that she only showed to IWA shinobi in 3rd Shinobi War. Kitsune, foxes, were clever, prank-loving and manipulative. They also always kept their promises, and Kushina showed all of those qualities. He watched as Naruto and Kushina went around the village looking at different places. his mother explaining to him about different places. He was quite angry at the glares that Naruto was receiving. Any and all sympathy, which was barely any, that he had for Konoha had evaporated long ago because of their treatment of Naruto. In his opinion, it would have been better if that masked lunatic dropped a comet on the village while he was being sealed into Naruto outside the village. He wondered what Kushina planned to do now that Naruto was homeless. He was not worried because Kushina seemed quite happy, which obviously meant she had something in mind. Looking at the mob that was following Naruto from a bit away made him apprehensive. It also reminded him of the fact that he could not sense any emotion while he was sealed inside someone. He wondered if there was a way to bypass that. It would surely be helpful in finding enemies and allies. Well, he could feel Naruto's emotions, of course, but that didn't mean much. He could read his thoughts after all. He could also feel the emotion of anyone who was even touching his hosts. He had quite a lot of time finding out that when he was sealed in Mito and Kushina. That was the reason that he knew that Minato genuinely loved and cared for Kushina and Naruto. He was just too fucking optimistic and put his hopes on wrong people. He felt a little sorry for the man, but only a little. Naruto was a 5-year-old child and even he saw the world more clearly than Minato ever did, and Minato was a veteran of war. There was no excuse for making trashy decision, especially for something so important. He wondered what would happen if he were to suddenly come to life. It would be a bloodbath, that's for sure. He wondered what the reaction of Konoha would be if he and Minato were to work together to teach those piece of shits their lesson. The horror, fear and despair would certainly be amusing, that's for sure. He put his thoughts on hold and started pumping his chakra in Naruto's body to make it ready in case he needed to outrun the mob. He knew that there were Anbu nearby watching everything, but he didn't trust them to actually do their job. From what he had seen of Naruto's, Mito's and Kushina's interaction with that old Sandaime fool, he had a pretty vague idea of what he was planning for Naruto. He was probably planned to wait until Naruto was near death, and then come to save him so that he could make Naruto loyal to himself in return for their kindness. The fact that there was no one else kind to Naruto other than him would make Naruto desperate for affection. There would be no need for loyalty seal or Sharingan-induced genjutsu. It would be purely psychological brainwashing. He didn't know why the Sandaime wanted that, but it didn't matter. He was already too late. The boy has everything that he needs. A loving mother who would tear apart the plans that Sandaime was carefully making by teaching Naruto everything he needed to be taught, and making him smart. And he had him too, even though Naruto didn't know it yet, to make him strong. He smiled sadistically at the future that the Konoha was going to have. They thought they could hurt an innocent and get away with it. Even if it was very less, Kurama still held divinity inside of him, though he didn't even knew that before he heard about 666. He would be the god that would judge Konoha and wipe the evil from within its walls using the flames of retribution. He couldn't wait for the day when Naruto was ready to show his true strength and intelligence to the world. The world will tremble before their combined might. Naruto was carefully listening to the dear Anbu as he explained about how orphans received monthly allowance from the village until the age of 16, or 12, which was the graduation age, if you were planning to be a shinobi. He followed the Anbu guy to the place where he would be getting his allowance. During the whole process the handler was glaring at Naruto, and was scowling darkly, but in the end he reluctantly gave the correct amount of money to Naruto. After the Anbu threatened him, of course. Naruto would have noticed this, if he came out of his shock that he had been in from the moment he realized that the stupid orphanage was taking his money for these 5 years and feeding him poisonous food to show for it. Oh, and the rags that he called clothes, can't forget about them. He came out of his shocked state when that Anbu guy told him to visit the Hokage Tower next day, and then puffed away in smoke. The way that the dear Anbu was lazily speaking and was slouching the whole time, he wondered if that was one of the lazy-ass Nara guys that his mother told him about. He shrugged and put that thought at the back of his mind and focused on the more exciting thing. That was so cool. I definitely need to learn how to do that. Naruto spoke to himself excitedly, or so the people nearby him thought when they heard him. They all started glaring at him even harder at those words. If Naruto was to look at their face, even a 5-year-old child like him would understand their thoughts in a heartbeat. Their face screamed, "The demon is trying to regain his power. We should kill him while he is still weak." Of course Naruto wasn't even looking at the stupid villagers. He spoke his words in such a way that could be passed as thinking out loud, but the truth was that Naruto was talking to his mother, who only he could hear. When he looked at his mother ready to whisper to her why she wasn't replying to his question, he froze. The reason for that was that his mother was glaring angrily at everything. He has seen his mother glare at others quite a few times already, but it still made him freeze, not because he was afraid of her, but because he didn't like his mother becoming angry. He wanted her to just always keep smiling at him and telling him how proud she was of him. He looked around and noticed that everyone was glaring at him, scowling darkly and muttering under their breath. He wanted to return the glare tenfold to these people who made his mother angry, but he was too busy sweat dropping as he realized that he didn't even notice all these people even standing there, let alone glaring at him. Their killing intent was so pathetic that he didn't even notice it existing. Even the orphanage was worse than this. Yes, he knew what killing intent was. His mother told him about it. She wanted him to have a resistance to Ki. When he first found out how it worked, he asked his mother to send him small doses of Ki until he could withstand it. She couldn't, and it was not because she was a ghost. She could use Ki against other people. She realized it later that even without her body, her spirit was still there. And projecting your desire and resolve to kill your opponent on your own spirit was how Ki worked, or at least that is how Ki is generated. You need to focus that pressure of spirit on your opponent, and let him feel it with his soul. That was how Ki was felt. Ki was one of the most basic use of manipulation, but she had no idea about that. That was also one of the reasons why the now dead matron didn't bother him too much. Of course, some people are too stupid to be bought down by fear of death. Of course, she couldn't use it most of the time because A and B kept watch over him. No, the reason she couldn't use Ki on him was simply because she couldn't even think about scratching him, even for training. Thinking of projecting a desire to kill her son was too much for her. She did try, of course, but as soon as she looked at her son's cute and determined expression, the only thing left in her mind was her desire to protect and be there for her son who had already withstood so many hardships, and he just turned 5 today. Before she realized it, she found her son crying on the floor. When she rushed to him to ask what was wrong, she couldn't even open her mouth. Her son had a big smile of his face as he was crying and was murmuring repeatedly, "Thank you for loving me so much." That day the two Uzumaki found out that it was possible to send love and protective intent to another person as well. They just decided that Naruto would have to get used to Ki the normal way. He did try to show his own love to his mother by using the now called love intent on her though. He could always see and hear his mother, but only at that time. He could feel her love for him. So he decided to learn how to return the favor. His mother was sobbing mess afterwards, as she too kept repeating, "Thank you for loving me so much." They found out later that intent manipulation, as they decided to call the ability, worked similar in all cases, and thus Naruto slowly became able to use and withstand little bits of Ki as well. The reason why the villagers' Ki was a bit less compared to those in orphanage was simply because they were scared of Naruto, or more like scared of dying and ending up like a trophy on the Hokage mountain. But human stupidity outweighs their fear of death. Of course, the people of orphanage knew of those deaths too. There were even 2 of them from the dozen people that died. But looking at Naruto decreased their fear, and instead of loving him, or even leaving him alone, when they looked at his childish, innocent expression, they hated him more. Naruto of course had no idea about that. Kushina did though. She couldn't move around much, with the invisible chains tying her to her son, but she could move a few meters around him, and because the rooms of orphanage were so small, she could easily pass through walls, or even the floor, and thus she heard of rumors as well, just like she heard the matron's plan for kicking Naruto out of orphanage, for him to die without having anyone to take care of. Well, too bad for the bitch, but Naruto did have someone to take care of him. She didn't know who it was that was killing those trash who tried to hurt her son, but she was thankful. Well, unless she found out that the killer just wanted Naruto to be her pawn. She didn't give that rumor much thought. There was nothing she could do unless that person decided to show himself/herself, and thus there was no point in worrying needlessly. Naruto of course knew that people hated him. The orphanage was the same, and his mother already told him that the only place he would be treated with any normality by masses would be where no one knew him. He did ask her why he was hated so much and was told that, because these people are blind and stupid, and are hating you for something you didn't do. She also told him that she would explain everything to him when he was ready for it. He dropped it after that. If his mother said that he wasn't ready for something, then he believed her. He smiled slightly and sent his feeling of love to his mother to soothe her anger, and then whispered to his mother in such a way that no one would hear anything, "Kachan, there is no need to get angry on them. Whatever they do doesn't matter to me. Rather, we actually need to do something about the fact that I'm homeless right now." Hearing Naruto's words and feeling his love for her, Kushina stopped glaring at those backstabbing insects and smiled at her lovely son. He is such a good boy. He is not stupidly optimistic like Minato, and he is not a dark emo broody like an Uchiha, just happy with what he has. If only more people were like her son. Kushina put that thought away. Yeah, right. As if anyone could come close to being anywhere near as awesome as her son. I already have something planned for that, so don't worry. Now let's go around and look at the village. I'll tell you about all the different locations. With a barely noticeable nod, Naruto and Kushina set out to look at the village. Naruto for first time in his life, and Kushina after 5 years. Naruto spoke after a few minutes as he continued walking. So, about that smoky teleportation technique. Kushina sighed tiredly and spoke. Naruto, I've told you, no learning ninjutsu until you are at least 6, we need to get your chakra unlocked first, which takes 6 months for most people and they do it at the age of 9 when they join the academy. Most clan children learn it at 8, and then we have to work on getting your control better before you go around even thinking of using Shunshin body flicker. And it's not a teleportation technique, it was just high-speed movement. Naruto pouted cutely at those words. No fun, it looked so cool too. Kushina looked at her son and squealed internally at her son's cuteness. She smiled slightly, she was happy that Naruto still had his childish moments. She knew he would not actually do anything that she didn't approve of, but she didn't want him to become a man who could only rely on others to make his decisions. She wanted him to understand the reasoning and thus learning how to make good decisions himself. After that they focused on getting their trip done. Kushina told Naruto about how Konoha was divided into multiple segments. She took him to Shinobi District first, which was divided into 2 parts, the bigger one for clans and the smaller one for non-clan shinobi. She showed him around and pointed to all the clan houses/compounds and told which clan they belonged to. She didn't have to tell him characteristics of each clan as she had already taken care of that when he was 3-year-old. Thus he was not shocked when his mother glared at the Hyuga clan compound. He knew why, of course, and he fully supported her anger. He only had his mother in his life to take care of him, and thus knowing how those Hyuga treated their own family as slaves was utterly disgusting to him. Finding a Hyuga girl, who was the same age as him, getting bullied for her pale eyes in a nearby area was a bit strange for him, but the fact that she was timid and crying was utterly baffling for both him and his mother. Kushina soon found out that she was right in her assessment. Her son could take on 7-year-old children easily. He would have still been defeated because there were 3 of them, but Kushina dictated the fight to Naruto, and he easily won with one well-aimed punch at the head for each of the 3. That was so pathetic. 7-year-old children at Yuzu could never be such weak wimps who passed out in one punch. When Hyuga Ko took away Hinata, whose name they found out when Ko spoke of her as Hinata-sama, they were shocked. That was Hyuga heiress? That pathetic timid crybaby? Naruto though was thinking more about something else, and he spoke about the inconsistency to his mother. Hey Kachan, don't Hyuga have those weird bloodline that let them watch everything in a few kilometer range? Kushina looked at her son and answered. Yes, the Byakugan, one of the 3 most famous Dijitsu. Why? Isn't it strange for a Hyuga to be getting bullied so close to their home, so close that anyone could see it happening from inside their room? Naruto then looked towards the Hyuga compound that could still be seen from here, and continued speaking. And isn't it strange for her caretaker to take this long to find her, especially considering the fact that the girl was their heiress? If it was Uchiha clan they would have mobilized their whole police force if the Uchiha heir was 5 minutes late for dinner. No. Kushina was shocked. Not at her son's insightful though, she knew that her son was wise. She gave her son all the knowledge he needed, he used his own wisdom to turn that knowledge into useful intelligence. The only thing that Naruto needed was experience, and thus learning how to make proper utilization of that intelligence. Of course she was still keeping him in dark about a lot of things. He was barely as intelligent as a 9-year-old, but that too is quite a lot comparing that he was just 5 right now. Not to mention, Naruto was impulsive, thought on his feet and cunning, combined with all the intelligence she gave him, he was completely unpredictable. She would not be shocked if her son would be able to defeat Nara at shogi by just improvising and unpredictability. She would love to see that happening. These qualities sometimes resulted in Naruto somehow reaching a shockingly correct conclusion in a very less time and with very less knowledge. Just like it happened now. Naruto may have been thinking of this as an inconsistency, but Kushina could see it for what it actually was. She grinned bloodthirstily. First day of being out in the village and her son gave her such a delicious piece of information. She put all the facts together. Hinata was timid and shy. She was Hyuga heiress. She was being bullied so close to her home. These were the facts that Naruto realized. The facts that Kushina could see while Naruto couldn't were. Hinata was girl. Hyuga were a male-dominant family. The Hyuga should have definitely saw the bullying, but they did nothing. The caretaker appeared seconds after Naruto defeated them. The caretaker was forceful and didn't listen to Hinata when she wanted to thank Naruto, and dragged her away. It was easy for her to reach the conclusion that Hinata was being targeted by her own clan. The main branch probably hates her because she is a girl, and thus not worthy in their eyes. The branch clan hates her because Hinata is of main house. She realized that Hyuga were allowing that bullying to happen. The caretaker always knew where Hinata was and waiting for maximum physiological damage to be done before interfering. But that didn't happen because of Naruto, so Hyuga appeared and took her away before she could gain confidence from watching Naruto. She did feel a bit bad about how Hinata was being treated, but there was nothing she could do. There was nothing Naruto could do as well other than becoming Hinata's friend, but that would gain him the ire of Hyuga clan. She decided she would hide this from her son until she taught him enough politics for him to understand the consequences of certain actions. She was definitely going to milk it for all it was worth though. Such high-quality blackmail material was too good to not use. There was no other interesting interaction in the shinobi district entirely. She wanted to at least see Mikoto to understand her reasoning for abandoning her son, but the only Uchiha outside the walls were the guards, and the glare they were sending easily conveyed the message of, "You are not allowed anywhere near here." The market was horrible. Most of the shopkeepers were glaring at Naruto, and outright refused to sell him anything at all. The ones who were not glaring, however, were selling him rotten food and useless rusted junk for 3 times the price of a normal item. And when Naruto pointed out that the rate that was written of the said object was 3 times lesser, these shopkeepers first looked shocked that he could read, and then they too started glaring at him, and shouted, "If you are not going to buy anything, then get lost, demon, and stop wasting my time." It was quite hard for him to calm Kushina down, who wanted to blast that trash full of so much ki that he would go into coma. But Kushina was barely able to restrain herself, knowing that it would be trouble for Naruto if everyone was to think that he could use ki. They tried to leave the shopping district after that, but were stopped by an old man who called out to him from a small food stall. "Hey, blonde kid!" Naruto looked towards the food stall and saw Ichiraku Ramen written on the top of the stall. He looked toward the old man who just called out to him, and saw him smiling warmly. He went on alert immediately. The last time someone smiled that warmly at him was when a couple came to orphanage to tell him that they were his real parents, and that they lost him during Kyuubi attack and were here to take him back. The man wore blue contact lens and the woman was wearing a blonde wig to make them seem real deal. Even their expression were warm. For a moment he wondered that these two really lost their child in Kyuubi attack. But then why would they be wearing wigs? He would have definitely be fooled if he didn't already knew his real mother. That, or the evil smirk that the matron had on her face as she kept muttering to herself, which was loud enough for him to hear, about how he would not be leaving their home once he stepped foot inside. Their expression when Naruto replied to them with, "Hokage Gigi told me that my parents died during Kyuubi attack. I'm sorry for your loss, but I'm not your child," was a mixture of shock at being caught, anger for the demon not falling for their clever plan, and fear of what the Hokage would do them, which ended up making it some weird blue-greenish expression. It was quite hilarious when Naruto told them their face looked constipated. Of course he didn't say it like that. He said, "Your face is looking like mine does when my poop is coming, but I've to push it back because there is someone else using the toilet." Kushina was happy that she was a ghost for that moment because she didn't want anyone to see her rolling on the floor hysterically laughing like that. Well, other than her son, of course, who didn't even understood why she was laughing like that. Was what he said funny? Even though that incident went away without any problem, they realized how utterly low the people of Konoha were ready to fall if they could even try something as disgusting as faking being a 3-year-old, Naruto's age at the time, orphan child's parent to hurt him physically and mentally. Naruto narrowed his eyes and went inside the stall carefully. He saw that the place was empty, and stood close to the corner where he could duck and run away fast. Naruto stood quietly for a few seconds, then spoke in a voice that easily conveyed how much trust he had in that old man who he didn't know the name of. "What do you want?" Said man's smile faltered at the voice, and he gained a sad and solemn expression as he looked at the child of his favorite customer. He hid his anger of the village and pain for failing Kushina behind his closed eyelids and his fake smile, and then spoke. "I overheard that man trying to overcharge you. He is a disgusting man, and you did good by showing him his mistake. I am Ichiraku Tuchi. Now I've not seen you around much. Who are you?" "Uzumaki Naruto, orphan," Naruto replied carefully. The man seemed sincere, but he was not going to fall so easily. His mother was strangely quiet and was not helping him at all, and he couldn't always rely on his mother to do everything anyway, so he decided to handle things carefully on his own. Tucci realized that opening up too much, or asking too personal question would backfire horribly. "Have you ever eaten ramen? It's the food of gods, you know. You'd love it, I'm sure. Come have a seat, since it's your first time, it'd be on the house." He stared at the man, wondering if he was maybe one of the very few people who could actually think inside Konoha, or if he was just faking the anger for Naruto to let his guard down. The man, Tucci, went behind the curtain to start preparing the ramen without even waiting to see if Naruto will sit or not. Naruto thought about what to do for a few minutes and then took a seat in the corner. Even if the man poisoned him, and nothing would happen, and free food was nice, so he decided to see how things would go. After that things were good. Naruto quite enjoyed the taste of ramen and had 3 more bowls, which was more than what most grown-ups could eat. Tsuchi smiled at him as he remembered Kushina eating bowls upon bowls of ramen like Naruto as well. They had idle talk the whole time, keeping the conversation light-hearted. Tsuchi told him how he had a daughter that was 5 years older than Naruto named Ayam, and that she was currently in school, civilian school, who Naruto would surely come to like. Naruto in the end did pay for the ramen by leaving the money on the counter from the meager amount of money he got as monthly allowance. He couldn't bring himself to take free food from someone who was obviously not very rich and even had a daughter to take care of, and then he left. In the end it wasn't much, but he at least knew that there was one person in Konoha who wasn't judging him without even trying to know him. Which was in the end a lie. Ichiraka Tsuchi is judging Naruto without knowing him. It was just that most people judged Naruto badly for the Kyuubi without knowing the real Naruto, while Tsuchi judged Naruto as being better because he knew Naruto's parents Minato and Kushina. But he had no idea about that, and neither did Tsuchi himself. Kushina and Naruto continued their journey after that, none of them talking about the Ichiraka incident. When they visited the park they saw that the children didn't hate Naruto but kept away from him because their parents told them that Naruto was a bad guy. They realized that it would soon turn to their own hate as well, because children mostly followed after their parents and listened to them stupidly. Naruto too did that of course, but he at least asked Kushina for a reasoning before agreeing to a decision. The only other thing of interest that happened was when Naruto tried to enter civilian library, he was kicked out without even any reason given to him. It was now 6 p.m. and sun was nearly set, darkness was increasing and streets were getting emptier. Unlike what most people would think, there was no celebration for the defeat of Kyuubi. After all, Kyuubi was not defeated. Konoha's Yondaime was dead, a lot of its shinobi along with him, and there was so much property damage, while the Kyuubi was still living and breathing in their midst, and enjoying its days. At least according to people of Konoha. So October 10th was not a day of celebration but of grief. Naruto and Kushina were of course aware of the mob of 10 people that has been following them for the last 15 minutes. Kushina was aware that there were 3 ANBU members present nearby watching them, but they were doing nothing. Kushina cursed herself for stupidly roaming around the village till it got so late. She thought that the people of Konoha would at least not try to hurt him after 5 years. But looks like seeing him walking around the village for the first time reignited their anger. The fact that he looked so healthy and happy probably increased their hate even more. The fact that today was the day that Kyuubi attacked did not even enter Kushina's mind till now. She turned towards her son to tell him to hurry up and to start running, but it was already too late. They were still far away enough that Naruto could run away from them, but their voices were easily reachable to him. Most of the shouts were about finish what Yondaime started and teaching the demon his place. Those Naruto didn't give a fuck about, and just continued hurriedly going in the direction that his mother already told him to go to. It was not his first time being called a demon obviously. He wondered if it was because he had whisker marks. It was stupid of course, to be called a demon just because of a few peculiar birth marks. But then again Konoha was home to stupid and mentally challenged. It was when someone shouted about his mother being a whore who sold her body to demon, did things change. The man who shouted that didn't even finish speaking his sentence before he was blasted with so much ki that he couldn't even breathe. He was so terrified that he couldn't even move from that position he was in, unlike those who were around him, who fell on their knees and were shaking from fear. The man looked upward after he realized that he was staring at the ground, and his whole body froze with terror. Glaring at him were those same eyes that terrified the whole village 5 years ago on this day. Those glowing red eyes with black slit in them were now directed at him and looking at him with utter loathing and hatred. Eyes that easily conveyed the message of how he was going to die painfully in a few moments. At that moment he realized his mistake. How much fucking stupid they were, thinking that they would be hero. Thinking they would do what even the Yondaime couldn't. How the hell did they stupidly believe that antagonizing this monster in human form was a good idea? No, he knew. He knew the real reason. Everybody knew. The boy was not Kyuubi. They still remembered the Kyuubi's powerful presence, and they knew it would not be defeated by anything, even their Hokage. But they were stupid and arrogant, feeling proud of something they had no part in. In the end, they didn't even care for any reason, they just hated the boy because they could. They made his life miserable because they could. It was so satisfying, putting down someone beneath you, to feel that power in your hands, the power over someone else's life, over their happiness. They looked at the happy-looking boy going around the village today and forgot about all those corpses that were found on Hokage Mountain. Those corpses which looked like the remains of an animal which was mauled by a bear, and then feasted on by vultures. And now squelch. The eyes of everyone, Kushina, the 9 remaining mob, the 3 ANBU and the Sandaime Hokage, who was watching everything from his crystal ball, and Kyuubi as well, widened in shock. Uzumaki Naruto was standing there still in the same place as before, but his face was turned slightly, due to which top half of his face was visible, from where those menacing red eyes were glaring at the corpse of the man who spoke ill about his mother. The most prominent feature at this moment, however, were the 9 pitch black chains that were coming out of Naruto's tailbone, 8 of them moving around menacingly like tails of Kyuubi did when he stood. One, however, was stretched out, and passing right through where the heart of said man once was, and was keeping the corpse dangling a few inches above ground. And then their horror grew, as they watched the corpse shrivel up in front of their eyes, looking like a 200-year-old skeleton in mere seconds, and a blue light that was definitely chakra run through the chains from the corpse and towards Naruto before being absorbed inside him. Everyone was terrified at seeing that happening, but it was Kyuubi who was the most shocked. What the fuck? Those were outer path chains. And with those words suddenly booming inside Naruto's mind did he break out of his anger-fueled haze. His red-slitted eyes became blue and innocent again, and the chains too disappeared along with the Ki. What was that voice? The change of Naruto's expression from hate to shock and confusion, and his words broke the frozen moment instantly. Kushina was the first to act and shouted at Naruto, knowing full well what was going to happen now. Naruto! Run now! Naruto was fast and would have followed his mother's order immediately, but he was nothing compared to full grown-up ANBU members. Kushina and Naruto could only look in fear and horror as 3 swords from 3 different ANBU came closer to him, all pointing at a lethal spot. They were not even planning to let him live. They would have not made such a decision, but the Ki from a 5-year-old child could never be so terrifying, at least according to them. The fact that he killed that man in such a gruesome manner only increased that fear, and those red-slitted eyes sealed the deal. They knew that Naruto was not a demon, and Kyuubi was sealed inside him. But what if Yandaime's seal didn't hold and Kyuubi took over Naruto and decided to destroy the village? And so they moved in to kill, without even giving much thought to their actions, being ruled by their fear. Every single millisecond looked like eternity to Naruto and Kushina as the swords grew closer and closer. And then the world broke, literally. Everyone nearby, apart from Naruto, went slamming in the ground. The crystal ball that the Hokage had in his tower exploded. Every single animal and insect in the whole elemental nations ran with fear as they sensed the presence of a being that was so far above them that they would die by just coming in her presence. The people of Konoha, or rather the whole elemental nations, were only spared the same horrible fear and feeling of powerlessness because they still held purpose. They were still needed to forge Naruto's path to greatness, and for that to happen, she needed them arrogant, not broken tools cowering in fear. And thus the strongest being in existence stepped her foot again in this wretched place. To meet her dragon. Everyone that was on the ground as well as Naruto could only look in horror/amaze as the crack in the world continued expanding and became a hole, and out of it stepped the most peculiar-looking being they had ever seen. The girl looked nowhere but at Naruto's face, and she approached him slowly. Naruto too looked at nowhere but at the girl, who looked to be 12 years old but felt like an immortal 10,000-year-old god. No, Ophis is not 10,000-year-old, she is much older. For those few moments Naruto noticed no one but her. Kushina could only look in horror as the strongest being in existence walked towards her son. She didn't even think that she would ever see her or death ever again so near her. And now she was walking towards her son with who knows what motive in mind. She couldn't even speak, let alone move, and it was not Ki or anything else holding her down. She was pushed to ground with her mere presence. It was so terrifying. A part of Kushina's brain that was out of touch with reality, and was the source of her airhead and eccentric moments, was shouting in overdrive about, "My son just unlocked his chakra." Along with, "Oh my god. My cute son can use chakra chain just like his mother." And the last one was shouting about, "Oh my manly son standing so defyingly in front of a god." Needless to say, Kushina was a mess. Ophis had completely different thoughts entirely, and unlike others she spoke them openly. "My dragon. My Naruto. Finally I'm here with you. After watching you growing up for the past 5 years, I'm finally here." And thus shocking everyone including Naruto, she wrapped her arms around Naruto in a hug, resting her head on his neck. It would have been quite a comical scene, looking at a 12-year-old girl dressed in a bizarre exhibitionist version of Gothic Lolita dress, hugging a 5-year-old boy who was wearing taters for clothing. But strangely it was a perfect scene, perfect in the same way that destruction and creation went hand in hand to each other. The moment she touched Naruto he felt himself freeze in shock. He could of course feel her presence just like everyone else, but unlike others it didn't feel oppressive to him, but more uplifting and protective, even when she was away from him. But now, he could really feel her vastness, he could see her infiniteness, He could see how utterly insignificant he was compared to her, but instead of becoming afraid like most of the others would have become, he grew to love that. The feeling of vast unknown, the feeling of infinite unending potential, the eternal adventure, and the infinite love and protectiveness that he could sense from inside this girl were euphoric to him. And without even realizing it, he too wrapped his arms tightly around the girl who he came to love in just that moment. Kyubi, though, was trying to keep his mind from breaking at feeling the same presence as Naruto. It was utterly terrifying for him, even if it was not for Naruto. Sensing the insane possessiveness she had for Naruto made him realize how lucky he was to decide to help Naruto. He was sure that not even his name would remain once she was done with him, if he was to hate or hurt Naruto. The girl's eyes then turned towards the insects that were just about to harm her Naruto, and she spoke. I should have realized that you humans would not learn and still continue your endless stupidity even after I left all those corpses as warning to stop your attack on my Naruto. Kushina and the rest widened their eyes at hearing those words. She was the one who had been killing everyone who tried to hurt Naruto/demon. Not caring about their thoughts, Ophis continued speaking. You tried to hurt him. You tried to hurt what is mine. You tried to take away from me my beloved dragon. You failed physically, but you still hurt him mentally. You made his life miserable, and now I will make your death miserable. You will have the same end as the other ones. You will be punished until you lose your mind, and then your soul will be destroyed. For daring to take from me what was mine, I'll take away from you everything that is yours. You won't get to join your loved ones, you won't get any chance to reincarnate, and you will end. And with those horrifying words that utterly destroyed their hopes to at least meet their loved ones in afterlives, Ophis turned away. 12 holes just like the one Ophis appeared from opened beneath the 9 remaining mob and 3 ANBU, and they disappeared screaming for mercy. Kushina looked mesmerized as Ophis and Naruto approached her. Her son had that beautiful and innocent smile on his face that she always thought was angelic. But right now, looking at his face that had no pain, horror or sadness at the fact that so many people were thrown to a fate far worse than death made her wonder if it was the true face of demon? She didn't know, she didn't care. Those insects tried to harm her son. They deserved eternal torture in her opinion, and the only thing that mattered to her was being there by her son's side no matter what, helping and guiding him without caring if he was to walk the path of an angel, the path of demon. Kushina looked at her son, an infinity dragon god holding hands, and smiled to herself. Or the path of dragon. Naruto was speechless. Kushina, his mother, who was floating on his left like always, was smirking at his slack-jawed expression. Ophis, whose name he came to learn during his walk to this place, was staring at him with her emotionless face. Her head was tilted slightly, and she looked very cute with that expression, though he could feel that she was thinking, are you stupid? Of course you have one. But seriously, how the hell was he supposed to know that he was not piss poor with the way he was living till now? He took a step back and looked towards his right, and could see the walls stretching quite a bit far and a forest after that. He looked towards his left, and saw the same wall stretching quite a bit, and a lake after that. He sighed and looked upwards toward the big gate with the Uzumaki symbol etched into it. He had a fucking house the size of Uchiha clan compound all to himself? What the fuck? And the stupid house had a lake and a forest connected for unlimited food and water? What was he going to find next? A big-ass training ground? Or even better, a library? Kushina smiled at her son and spoke in a happy voice. Happy birthday, son. From now on you can live peacefully without anyone interfering with our lives. Naruto's eyes widened. So this is the gift that Mom was planning to give me? He smiled at the house that was now his and spoke to his mother. I love it, thank you, Mom. You are the best. Of course, I am Databane. Uzumaki. Kushina's face burned with embarrassment, as her son looked at her with wide eyes shining with happiness and admiration. Damn it, I thought I controlled that habit of mine. She was still happy though. That verbal tick only came out when she was happy and excited, something that she has not gotten much in last 5 years. That is so cool. Mom has ticks similar to mine. Kushina saw Naruto shouting excitedly, jumping around happily. She smiled seeing that her son was still innocent and happy. She was worried what would happen to his mental health when he killed that trash who spoke bad about her. She decided she needed to teach him control over his emotions first. It would end badly for Naruto if he went berserk every time someone badmouthed her. Though there was a part of her that was very happy with how Naruto got enraged for her sake. And there was so many other things to teach him as well. Now that he has unlocked his chakra and the chakra change, she needed to teach him how to control those too. Because of the death, or rather disappearance of 10 civilians, or more importantly 3 ANBU, things would get hairy very fast in Konoha. At first she was planning for Naruto to make a few appearances in village every week so that no one would wonder where he went. That was now not possible. Even if the ANBU were to not do anything, the civilians would definitely try to lynch her son. Not to mention, with the way those A and B were not doing anything to disperse the mob made her finally come to sane conclusion that the QB reached ages ago. That third Hokage Hiruzen was trying to brainwash Naruto. He was probably planning on the mob attacking Naruto and doing a lot of physical and psychological harm on Naruto, and then save him before things went out of hand, either himself or by using his A and B. The kind grandfatherly act would have made him seem like the only person who cared about Naruto in Konoha, and thus getting his loyalty. She didn't know why Third wanted Naruto's loyalty. Well, there was the fact that Naruto was Kyuubi's Jinchuriki, and thus Third would want Naruto to be loyal to village. But then wouldn't it have been better for him to make sure that the village was knowledgeable about what a Jinchuriki was, so that he could be respected and loved and thus in return love and fight for the village? She sighed loudly. Wasting brain space is not going to solve anything. Until I know more about his motives, I can't do anything. Kushina focused on the present, and decided that getting in the house after that life-threatening ordeal and getting some rest was more important. Naruto, let's go in. The house is ours so you can look around it later. We need to make plans first. Now put your palm on the doorknob, it'll check for authentication by slashing your palm a bit, and taking your blood, so it will sting. Naruto stopped thinking of how close he and his mother were if even their verbal tick was similar to each other, when he heard her serious voice. Without a complaint he put his hand on the doorknob. He felt the sting but he didn't even grimace. It hurt a bit but it was nothing compared to those fevers of his that he used to get when he was younger. He looked around wide-eyed at the way the door automatically opened. These seals that his mother spoke about were the most awesome things in existence as far as he was concerned. The only reason he was not jumping around shouting at his mother to teach him those was simply because he knew that he will be learning those soon. He knew that Uzumaki clan was famous for using seals and being the last known Uzumaki alive. It was his duty to learn his clan's ways. He didn't understand much about that. Why the hell should he care about what a bunch of old dead guys thought anyway? But since his mother said that he should do it, then he would do it. Maybe there might actually be something useful in there, like those cool seals. The scenery inside was very beautiful. There were a few narrows that were connected to the lake outside that were dug in serpentine fashion all around the compound. Thick and cushion-like grass was covering every centimeter of the ground. There were a lot of trees that were growing out the ground at random intervals. There were many birds chirping and squirrels running around and living all around the area. Naruto felt quite at peace in this location. It's so beautiful, he murmured out loud without even realizing it, mesmerized as he was with the calm and peace of the place. Kushina smiled happily, thinking the same thing. Ophis, who was silently observing everything, too was enjoying the scenery with her Naruto as the focus. Everything looked better with Naruto in it. They soon reached the front door of the main house and had to repeat the process to get inside the house. The house inside was free of dust and looked exactly like it did when Kushina saw it last. He wondered why that was, but then chalked it up to awesome seals just being awesome. Naruto sat on the sofa that was close to him, exhaustion from the day suddenly catching up to him. Before he could even get a yawn out, Ophis, who has been quiet all this time, come and sat on Naruto's lap. The scene looked quite comical because Ophis, who looked 12, was sitting on Naruto's lap, who was 5. The height difference was quite big and Ophis completely hid Naruto from view. Ophis frowned for a moment, and then stood up. She went to a large couch nearby and laid on it. She then turned towards Naruto, who was staring at her, and gestured at him to come towards her. Come to me, my dragon. I'll sit on your lap when you grow old enough. Kushina watched numbly as her son went and laid down on top of Ophis, hugging her tightly. She would have been worried about her son's safety if not for the satisfied smile that was on both Ophis and Naruto's face. It would have looked quite indecent if both Ophis and Naruto looked older, but right now they looked like cute children that they were, well, that Naruto was. Right now she was just wondering how and why Naruto was trusting the dragon god so much. She wanted to ask that question to her son but was worried about her existence if she accidentally angered the dragon god. Luckily the awkward silence was broken by Ophis herself. You have done a good work in raising my dragon Uzumaki Kushina. It seems my decision to grant Naruto power to see your ghost was a correct one. Both Kushina and Naruto's eyes widened at those words. But they didn't interrupt because Ophis was still speaking. When I saw Naruto suffering during his first 6 months, I wanted to bring him to myself and raise him strong and safe. But I don't know anything about raising any children, and would have more than likely made him explode because of giving him too much power. Or made his brain melt due to transferring too much knowledge in his brain. Kushina shivered at those words. Apparently the gods were not all-knowing and omniscient, even if they were ridiculously powerful as she initially thought. I saw how you were strong enough to remain in living world even after death because of your attachment to your son, and decided that you would do a good job of raising him strong and intelligent. My decision was correct. You know you are not like most humans. At those words, Office turned look at Kushina directly instead of staring at Naruto's beautiful eyes and innocent face. Your spirit feels more like that of a mother dragon than a human. How peculiar. Such was not the case during the moments of your death. Perhaps by being in my presence during your final moments, when your soul was weak, caused it to mutate slightly. I'm not saying that you didn't love your son before, I'm just saying that your love now is far more fierce in quality. Kushina and Naruto were both quite put out by those words. If what they understood correctly, then if Office didn't visit Naruto during Kushina's final moments, then there was a chance that Kushina would not have stayed with her son. They didn't even want to think of what would have happened in that case. They put that thought in the deepest, darkest corner of their mind and focused more on present. Naruto sobbed slightly and hugged Office much tighter and put his head on her neck and whispered just loud enough for Office and Kushina to barely hear. Thank you so much. I don't know what I would have done if I didn't have Mom and you looking after me. Say, is there any way for me to touch Mom? Kushina wiped her own tears away, wanting to hear Office's reply for that question. Office was silent for a few seconds and then spoke. When I visited you 6 months after you were born, I gave you a very small amount of my energy. Here Office created a snake from her fingertip, which resulted in Naruto looking at her starry-eyed. Kushina realized that the snakes were not actually snake but pure energy shaped in form of snake. I focused that power to strengthen your soul, or as you people call it, in. I focused it more towards your eyes so that you would be able to see the souls. There is a chance that it also increased your intelligence slightly. I didn't use much because, as I said earlier, your body is still weak, and so is your soul. You would explode if I gave you too much of my power. You would have achieved same ability if you continued growing up normally in a few decades. But that was time you didn't have. You can theoretically touch her if your soul was far stronger, but to reach that level will probably take you a few centuries. At the very least, it would just be easier for you to learn how to leave your own body without killing yourself and then returning to it later, or just bringing your mother back to life. Kushina and Naruto were looking wide-eyed at those shocking facts. Kushina was wondering when Office did that to Naruto with her looking after her son 24/7, but just put it out of mind right now. There were more important things at the moment. The knowledge that In was soul was taught to everyone in academy, but Kushina didn't actually pay any attention to that. Probably no one did. Finding out that In was actually soul shocked her to core. Does that mean that ninjutsu could hurt me? Since they are part In? Spoke Kushina with worry. That was dangerous, and she would need to be a lot more careful. Office looked at her as she was crazy and spoke in the same monotone. I just told you that Naruto can't touch you. You can't punch something if you can't touch it. And those measly parlor tricks that you call ninjutsu are nothing more than more powerful punches. It needs more than being In to touch a pure soul. It needs a lot of In energy, which none of you humans possess. You won't be harmed because you are completely spirit, and a soul is much too powerful to be harmed so easily. There is a reason that soul is called immortal, you know. Only another pure soul can harm another pure soul. And by pure soul I mean a soul which is separate from body. Not that good or evil crap you humans sprout wherever you go. Kushina and Naruto nodded thoughtfully at those words. That made a lot of sense. At that moment someone else decided to intrude in their contemplation. The wielder of Rinnegan, Otsutsuki Hagoromo, or as you may know him, Sage of Six Paths, was able to touch and rip souls out of humans. He was even able to read through their memories in an instant. Naruto jumped up from where he was laying down comfortably on top of Office and looked around, startled to see where the powerful sounding voice came from. It was the same voice again. Mom, did you hear that voice now? That was so cool and powerful sounding voice. Naruto spoke excitedly. He then conveyed what the voice said before anyone could even answer. Kushina was scared that Kyubi would hate Naruto because she kept him chained like that and treated him so badly, so she was quite thankful when she heard from Naruto that Kyubi was instead giving them information. At least Kyubi didn't hate Naruto for being her son. That was something that made her feel even worse about herself, considering she didn't even try to know him before she started hating him. Before Kushina could say anything, Office spoke first. And this Rinnegan that you speak of, what is it? Is it possible for Naruto to have it as well? Are there any others that possess those? Kushina stopped herself from speaking at that. She realized that it was more important to talk about those things first. The sound boomed inside Naruto's head again, answering Office. Kyubi explained everything from his side of the story, all that he knew at least, which Naruto was telling word to his mother and Office. He told about how he and his 8 other siblings first opened their eyes in front of Hagoromo, how he told them about the Shinju and about his mother being an insane mad woman, about his and his brother Hamura's life and fight with Jubi and then their mother, along with their goals in life. Kyubi then told his audience about the things that he himself saw in life and realized that his father was bigoted, and either too optimistic or too stupid, which were probably same thing in the end. And thus the Shinigami sealed me into you, Naruto. And I've been helping you by healing your body all this time from those poisons and malnutrition. That was probably the reason why you awakened the chakra chains so fast. As to the dragon's other question, I think Naruto will awaken Rinnegan eventually anyway. You see, most Uzumaki can only use adamantite chakra chains which are super strong. Kushina was the only one who could use adamantite sealing chains which could seal any movement from both chakra and body, which I realized was because of Uchiha blood in Kushina. And I already told you how Rinnegan can possibly be awakened if Senju and Uchiha blood was to be combined. You see, Naruto already has Senju blood in his veins. Hashirama's Mokutan had the same properties of absorption that Naruto's black chains showed earlier. Hashirama's chakra that I could sense in Kushina mixed with Madara's was too small to achieve that at first, but because I have been strengthening Naruto's DNA in order to heal him, I think it started awakening and mixing the strengthened DNA. I also think that if Naruto was to have Hyuga blood in his veins, then he would be able to complete the black chakra chains by adding the last ability, which is the ability to control the body and chakra of anything in which the chains are embedded and thus achieve outer path chains. The combination of Hyuga and Uzumaki blood may also awaken Tenseigan, which is final form of Byakugan, as well. Combining those 4 bloodlines together will bring him even more close to Otsutsuki Kagaya than my father ever was. I don't even know what abilities she had, and Rikuta really didn't tell us much about her. As for anyone having Rinnegan, I already told you how I think Madara was able to achieve the Rinnegan. I also told you how I think that masked man was Madara's pawn, so there is a very big chance that Madara's plan is still in work. He probably has his eyes stashed somewhere, and is waiting for someone to bring him back to life. The QB sighed loudly after that. Damn, I've not spoken that much, and actually I don't think I have ever spoken that much at once ever. Ophis was looking thoughtful after hearing so much, and was considering how to use this new knowledge for best gain. Kushina was a mess of emotion. She knew quite a lot already, but damn, that was shocking. Finding out that she had Uchiha fucking Madara's blood in her veins made her confused and apprehensive. She too had no idea if Madara was her father or if he just went and injected his blood in her as an experiment, and she didn't know which was worse. Finding out that there was Hashirama's blood mixed in with Madara made her overactive mind conjure some images. Madara, please stop. No, today I shall finally defeat you, Hashirama. But I have a wife, I can't do this to her. What is a wife? Throws his clothes aside. A miserable little pile of secrets. But enough talk. Have at you. Moans of Hashirama and Madara continues in background. Ah, Mom, your nose is bleeding, and your face is kind of scary. The sound of her son's voice broke her out of her daydreaming. She saw him looking at her with a little bit of fear. Ophis was looking at her with a knowing smirk. She blushed a little at that. Her son then spoke again. Akubi, huh? Okay. Kurama is saying that Mom is a pervert. What is a pervert? Kushina looked horrified for a second, then gained an evil smirk and spoke. I have no idea, son. Why don't you ask Kurama-san to explain it to you properly? It was Kyubi, or rather Kurama's turn to look horrified now. Explaining what is pervert to a 5-year-old child. No. Damn you, Kushina. Kyubi then sighed. Well, if he was going to do it anyway, then he will make sure to corrupt Naruto, and make him a legendary pervert the likes of which the world has never seen. He laughed evilly at that thought. Uzumaki Kushina would rue the day she tried to prank the mighty Kyubi, Ayui. Kushina continued her speculation of the story. Knowing about all these powers and how Naruto could achieve them was actually quite nice. Mokutan and Sharingan would go a long way in making Naruto powerful. Having Rinnegan, on the other hand, is going to be so awesome that she couldn't even explain. She wondered for a moment why she never awakened the Sharingan, but then put that thought behind her. It doesn't matter anymore. The last part was about the Hyuga blood. She was disgusted by the thoughts of a Hyuga's blood flowing through her lovely son's veins. But she was not stupid. Power was power, and discarding such useful power up would be stupid in the extreme. It was not just one as well. Not only the chains will become even more powerful, Naruto would also get Byakugan or maybe even Tenseigan, and who knows what else. Her son would be a powerhouse that would be able to devastate armies in a single breath. There was so much work to do. The first thing that she needed to teach Naruto was definitely going to be Shadow Clone. The memory return feature was too fucking good to not use. She looked towards her son and saw that he had an expression that was mix of sadness and determination. Naruto was a mess even more than his mother. A lot of the things went over his head that Kyubi spoke of, but he understood enough to get the gist of it. The way that the Bijou were treated by Hagoromo, and then knowing that Yondaime Hokage Minato, who was his father, and wasn't that a shock, treated him the same way, made him think of Bijou's as older sibling in same position. He was quite a bit sad and angry at how badly humans treated them just because they were different, just like he was different. Finding out that the reason he was hated was because he had Kyuubi sealed inside him was shocking. He was a fucking 5-year-old child, and even he knew how the sealing scroll worked. How the hell these people not see him as jail, but rather as jailer, was beyond him. They didn't even try to know Kurama, and just assumed he was bad without any reason at all. But in a way it was good. Because of this he understood that Kyuubi was not at fault, just like he never was. At first he used to think that Konoha was hating him for something that he or his father/mother did. Or perhaps even because of a misunderstanding, and he was sure that they would be able to see their mistakes, and stop hating him in future. Hearing how Kurama and his siblings are being treated with same hate and fear, when no one even tried to know them for nearly 1,000 years now, made him realize that such was a stupid and naive thought. He knew that not every human must be like that, and most probably just went with the flow so that they would not be ostracized in society. But to him, not doing anything even when you knew yourself to be wrong was even worse than doing bad things because you didn't know any better. There must have been quite a lot of people that were actually open-minded and tried to do something, but they were probably less than 1% of the planet's population. He felt that Otsutsuki Kagaya and Uchiha Madara actually had the right thought. Humans can't be trusted to even breathe correctly without setting someone else on fire. But they definitely went about it the wrong way. He didn't know a better way yet, and he didn't care. He only cared about his mother, Office, and Kurama, and thus he only cared about living peacefully and happily with them. He was fine with just what he had and wasn't going to go around taking from others, unless they didn't deserve it. And of course anyone who tried to harm him would get punished and destroyed, but he wasn't going to go around killing anyone who breathed. That would be utter waste of his time. Naruto looked at his mother and Office and smiled and spoke. I am not going to waste my time going around hurting anyone, but I will destroy anyone who comes to harm me and mine. I only care about having fun and living a happy and exciting life with my precious people. And any who try to ruin that will be destroyed, and for that I will become smart and powerful, so that I could protect everything that I love. Naruto finished his heartfelt speech excitedly. Kushina had tears in her eyes at how caring and kind her son was even after being treated so badly. She too realized that wasting time going around squashing those ants is pathetic. Rather, killing any pest that came your own way and then go around living your life happily was a much better option. Kurama smirked to himself after hearing Naruto's thoughts and words. For so long had he wanted to have companionship, to have a friend. He had lost hope so long ago, but finally someone who saw the Bijou as they truly were did appear. Looks like his father was not completely wrong. He was sure that Naruto was the prophesied child that was supposed to bring all 9 of the siblings together. He also knew that Naruto would bring peace to this land. He didn't know how though. Naruto may just go and kill all humans on the planet, and that too would bring peace for the planet and the nature that was being abused by humans. Frankly, he didn't care. All that he knew was that things would be interesting. Office didn't care about anything other than watching her Naruto and his happiness. She had no problem if he destroyed this planet or left them to kill and eat each other. She would, however, make sure that he gained all the power he could from this world before leaving this place. Office started making plans on how to get Naruto strong as fast as possible. Getting him books from a world where no superpower existed and thus humans were much more scientifically and technologically advanced seemed like a good place to start. She also remembered a few things that she collected from her journeys across the multiverse and decided to give them to Naruto. It was not like she made use of any of them. By the way, can Office explain what she is? I don't know anything about you other than what I speculated, and I'm sure Naruto would love to learn more about you as well. Kurama spoke to Naruto, who then told Office with clear excitement shining in his eyes. Kushina too wanted to know about Office. I am Office, Ouroboros dragon, an infinite dragon god. Primordial god of infinity, nothingness, destruction and void. With that, Office stood silently staring emotionlessly at the faces of Naruto and Kushina. After 30 seconds of silence, and realizing that she wasn't going to continue, Kushina spoke. So, how were you born? Office tilted her head slightly and looked down on the ground in contemplation. Kushina heard Naruto whisper so cute at that, and she had to agree with her son. I don't know, I was just there. Naruto then spoke excitedly. Are there any other primordial gods? How are they different from normal gods? Can I become one too? Kushina looked incredulously at her son. Did he just ask if he could become a god? Well, at least it was quite a nice aim, Office replied calmly and with a smile. There are a few more. Primordial gods are forces which have and will always exist, and we rule over those. I am destruction. Great Red is creation, illusion, dream and hope. Death, well, he rules over death and decay. 666 He is God of life and evolution. What? What? Oh, me too, what? Kurama and Kushina cried out in shock at hearing those last words. And Naruto, he copied them because it looked exciting. Ophis's eyes twitched a little at being interrupted so rudely, but let it pass. Naruto would be sad if she was to destroy Kushina or Kyuubi, and she didn't want to make Naruto sad. Kushina gulping down her fear when the oppressive atmosphere that came from interrupting Ophis disappeared again. She knew it was stupid, but damn, she couldn't keep her shock at that bit of knowledge. Ophis continued after that when it became clear that she wouldn't be interrupted. 666 is God of life, evolution and transcendence. There is more than just being born and dying. The process in between, the life, the growth that every being or object has, is what 666 represents. Now, before you interrupt me, let me clarify it to you. The concept of evil and good that you humans have is stupid, pathetic and useless to us. 666 wanted out power, he attacked us. I don't care if he had good intentions or not. I and Red tore him apart, we were planning to kill him to clean him. You see, us primordial can die, but we can't be destroyed. If one of us if killed, then we would born again just without any previous memories or experience. We wanted to do that to 666 so that any stupid ideas he had in his head would be destroyed. But he survived being torn into 666 pieces. I guess it was our fault that we didn't try to disintegrate him, but it doesn't matter. We weren't trying hard anyway. Killing a god is hard. Killing a primordial is impossible for anyone other than another primordial. Kushina and Kurama felt a chill run down at those words. That was scary as fuck. Naruto, on the other hand, was vibrating with excitement. Her son was strange. He was so smart and mature one moment, and then so childish the next. Well, she herself was like that, so it was not that strange. Ophis continued after that. There is also a primordial god of time and another one of space. Though I have no idea where the god of space went, he has not been seen for a few millennia now. Those are all the primordial gods. While most of the so-called gods are just people who are stronger than others and easily stand out. Like that Rakuta guy of yours. Some of them do connect with other things, like sun, earth, lightning, etc., and become god of those elements. Those are stronger than the rest. A true god is one which gains power from belief. The more people who believe in that god, the stronger he is. Primordial don't need that though. We are one with what we represent, even if no one prays to infinity. Everyone knows that it exists, and that alone is enough to empower me. There can be many god of sun, but there can only be one primordial god of infinity. I can, however, allow someone to represent me. That is why there are minor gods of time, space, life, death, creation and destruction as well. There is one god that is better than most others around him. His name is Shiva, and he is the god of destruction in my stead. To me, though, one will become a true god when your body and soul are completely one with each other. At that point you won't need a body to stay alive, and thus would be able to regenerate a new body even if you were blown up to molecules, and your body will keep your soul chained. At that point, you will transcend being a normal living being. The concept like shape, structure, sex, of body will become useless. You would be able to change your body to anything you want, just like I am currently doing, by being in this human form. You will be able to give birth to your own soul in form of avatar like Vishnu does. Yes, you could become primordial god. I was actually planning to have you destroy and absorb pieces of 666 across the multiverse once we were done here and have you take the place of new god of life. Kushina and Kyuubi were both looking wide-eyed at all that information, especially the fact that Naruto could become a god, and Ophis even had plans to make him a fucking primordial god with equal strength to her. Naruto was wait, is that smoke coming out his ears? Well, apparently the excitement was too much, and Naruto fried his brain. Well, good riddance, I mean, thank goodness. It was such a late night anyway, and Naruto definitely deserved some sleep. Tomorrow was definitely going to be hard on him with his training starting and all that. Kushina, Kurama and Ophis all wanted Naruto to become strong and would be there to help him every step of the path, but they wanted Naruto to become competent so that he could do everything himself instead of being dependent on them for everything. And for that he needed to learn a lot. Tomorrow his training will start. And soon Naruto will show the world what he can do now that he had people who loved him and were there to support him. Everywhere he looked he could see only one thing: destruction. The land was scorched. The sky was red and full of black smoke rising from earth. Water? Well, he wasn't sure that there was any left anymore. There was lava oozing out of cuts and trenches in the earth. And in the middle of all of that were the last two living creatures on this hell. These two creatures were fighting for some unknown reason. He couldn't hear much, their voices seemed muffled, but from the little that he could hear he could find a few things. These two were brothers, twins actually. He couldn't actually tell that fact to be true until the one who was called Virgil had his hair come down from their slicked position. After that both him and his brother Dante looked copies of each other. Virgil appearance. Google Devil May Cry 4 Virgil first image. Dante appearance. Google Devil May Cry 4 Dante first image. He also learned that both of them were Nephilim. Initially he had no idea what that word meant, but from their words he later understood that Nephilim meant a child born between a demon and an angel. The fight, well, he has never seen something so amazing. Virgil only used one sword, that beautiful white katana that he had. At first Naruto thought that he was sending energy blades or even air pressure like ninja of his world did, but later he realized when Virgil showed his teleportation that the blade was an actual dimension slasher. There were also those ethereal glowing blades that Virgil summoned and used as a long-range weapon. Dante, on the other hand, well, he too had only one sword, but his sword had the strange ability to transform into other weapons like a scythe, two big shuriken, an axe, spiky gloves, icy nunchaku, twin swords of fire and air, an electric guitar, and by electric he meant that it threw lightning attacks on the enemy, and a few other things. He also had a set of two guns which could also change into different forms, a shotgun, an energy gun, a suitcase, and wasn't that a surprise until the suitcase turned into a machine gun, and then to a laser gun, and then a fucking plasma launcher, and then finally into a flying thing that could shoot a dozen homing missiles at the same time, and a few other things. Well, though it may seem that Dante had a lot of advantage, it was not actually true. Though Virgil's sword did not change, they offered just as many abilities to him. Dante favored speed and power a lot, and thus fought like a berserker. Virgil, though, favored accuracy and precision and fought like an assassin. So in the end the fight was bloody awesome. The carnage those two were unleashing onto the world was beautiful. After a 6-hour-long fight, that seemed more like centuries long, it ended. Both of the brothers ended the fight with a hug. The scene would have been peaceful if only they didn't have their sword embedded into each other's hearts. And with their last breath Naruto felt the world around him darken. Naruto opened his eyes and stared at his bedroom's roof that he saw that every time he woke up. Did he came back or he was always in his bedroom and all that he saw was just a dream? But it didn't look like a dream, it didn't feel like a dream. He sighed and closed his eyes back again. At first that fight was amazing and all, but later near the end it became so much more. He could feel it, without any words being exchanged. He could tell that those two brothers were broken. They were all that remained in an empty world filled with fire and smoke. Of course they were broken. But, Naruto opened his eyes again and looked towards his right. Black eyes full of love, protectiveness and possessiveness stared back at him. Even if we are the last thing on this planet, I'll still be happy because I will be with you. His beloved goddess smiled at him, and brought her face forward to kiss him. Their kiss was wet and sloppy. He dove his tongue in her mouth and wrapped it around her own and started sucking and licking, and immediately felt him mouth filled with delicious liquid. He used to think it was Opha's saliva but later found out that Ophis was feeding him her power, in all the kisses using it as saliva, when he sucked her in the form of milk, or using it as her juices when he was licking and sucking her beautiful. He felt his harden at that erotic mental image and felt that his was covered in something wet and hot. He knew exactly what that place was. He remembered every crease in his goddess' fleshy walls, remember every millimeter of her body. He could think later about what he saw. Right now he needed to get his daily dose of Ophis-chan's body. And with a thrust he started his morning with the same thing he ended his night with. Before she left the dimensional gap to join Naruto, she thought that she would come to understand the reason for her attraction towards Naruto if she was near him constantly, observing him. She was stupid, she still had no idea how and why she felt possessive of him. The only thing that happened was that she instead also fell in love with him. She saw the handsome form of her beloved dragon as he walked out of the bedroom after getting changed. Most of the time she too joins him in his bath, but today she wanted to spend some time alone thinking. Well, she did think and came to a realization that she didn't care about why and how anymore and only about the fact that she did indeed love Naruto. She looked at his smile emotionlessly like always. That stupid child didn't even realize the fact that only he could truly see her. Not even the other primordials could tell her emotions, but Naruto? Well, he could read her like an open book. Even the most muted emotions were caught in an instant by him, and she had no idea why. Ophis-chan, how do I look? Ophis then, after hearing and processing Naruto's question, focused on his attire. Naruto's default appearance from now. Google Banpai Akira Yakumo ran and checked the first image. All the white and blue in the dress is black, the black is red. There are no foxtails and fox ears yet. And of course the eyes are blue. Yes, the hairs are like this and not spiky. The reason for this will be explained later in story. On the front part, instead of that symbol in blue, the symbol is of Uzumaki spiral surrounded by the symbol of Ouroboros, i.e. two snake biting their tail and making an 8 structure, symbol of infinite as used in DxD. Inside the two ovals of 8 structure are the Uzumaki spiral. She had to admit that this was good, an attire worthy of a future god. No, an attire worthy of he who would soon be known across all creation as her mate. She didn't even have to say anything. He guessed her approval if the happy smile of Naruto's face was anything to go by. She still wondered how he could read her so well. Office-chan, I saw something today. It felt too real for a dream, not to mention I have never seen something like this ever before. And thus Naruto tells her everything that he saw. He was worried when he saw her eyes widen at the start but lost that worry when she got a smirk on her face. After that I woke up. You know what happened after that? Office spoke after that. Well, it was about time. Don't worry about them for now, but do tell me every time you have any other such dreams, okay? Now go and continue your training. We'll be entering Konoha in 1 week for the first time after 4 years. How is Kushina, by the way? Office saw Naruto gained a glazed look for barely an instant before he was looking back at her. Good, his speed at entering and exiting his mindscape was top-notch. It'll be very problematic if he lost focus in the middle of battle for any longer than that. Mother is still sleeping. According to Kurama, being transferred inside the seal is a very tiring process, and Mother will stay out for another week at least. Naruto in his Fuinjutsu study was able to tweak 8 trigram seal and learn how to seal more than one being in himself. Later they theorized that since soul itself is a form of energy, then it could be sealed inside as well. They were able to do it 5 months and 3 weeks ago, and the process was exhausting enough that it sent Kushina in a 6-month-long hibernation. But now that time was about to expire. Office nodded at that and watched Naruto leave the room to continue his training. Barely a second after Naruto was gone, Office heard a female voice speak out. It has started then. His divine powers are awakening. Office spoke without turning. Yes, they are. He saw another dimension, a battle. Nephilim of demon Sparta and his angel wife Eve. He saw their death. Office heard another female voice speak, this time a voice that she hadn't heard before, and this voice was filled with intrigue. So it is confirmed then. Vector did die at the hands of Trihexa, 666, otherwise Naruto wouldn't have awakened power as primordial god of space. It also confirms that 660 SIXS chains are able to steal a god's divinity. Otherwise space manipulation would not have been possible for these chakra user. Office turned her head towards the voice and saw her form, or rather her new form, and raised an eyebrow. First time I've seen you in a female form. Death smirked and looked at Naruto right through the wall. Death's appearance. Google Death Deadpool or Death by Edward Marinov. Check first image. Well, there is this one man who I really wanted to impress. Then you picked the wrong appearance. You should have taken a more childish form. Spoke the first female voice again. This woman was none other than the god of time, fate and possibilities. Her name, well, one of her names is Kylina, yes, the same, Empress of Time from Prince of Persia. Goddess of Time's current appearance. Google Remilia Scarlet Full 1227579 first image. She'll sometimes change her appearance to Google Empress of Time from Prince of Persia. The woman, little girl, was sitting in a very vampirish way, majestically on a flying throne high in the air with one leg over other, and sipping blood or wine from the glass slowly. Death and Office turned to look and gave the third woman a dry look. Have you looked at the way he looks at his mother? Spoke Office. He is probably the only one who thinks that he is being discreet in ogling her. Continued Death. He has even called me mother during one of our sessions. I would have been angry if I actually cared who he slept with. Supplied Office. Thanks for that. I was quite sure you wouldn't mind if I played the rape game with him, but it's good to have a confirmation. Said Death. Go ahead, do make sure to not traumatize him though. I'm quite sure that Kushina wants to ride him too, and that was the real reason why she was so happy with being transferred to the seal. She will be able to physically interact with Naruto there after all. Spoke Office. Ho, in that case I'd like to join in on the fun too. I'd love to see other applications of that Kage Bunshin technique of his. Can't say I've got a chance at being filled in both holes by the same man at the same time. Spoke Kylina. Both Office and Death froze for a moment after hearing those words, and then Office's eyes narrowed slightly, and she spoke. I will be joining you too. And then she looked away, trying to hide that gleam in her eyes. There was no way that she was going to miss that. Death and Kylina looked at each other, and exchanged sly grins. Death then frowned a little as she thought about something else. I've been getting souls from that planet, all of which stopped yesterday. That must have been the last being alive except for Dante and Virgil. But it's been 5 hours since Naruto saw that dream and I still haven't got their souls. Ophis and Kylina looked at Death's confused expression. Ophis spoke. Has such a thing happened before? Death answered, a few times. The last such case was Uzumaki Kushina. Both Ophis and Kylina's eyes widened at those words. Ophis stood up and disappeared in a dimensional hole before anyone could even say anything. She came back not 5 seconds later, but different than how she was gone. She had a smirk on her face, and the reason for that was obvious. In her hands were 2 swords, Rebellion which belonged to Dante and Yamato, Virgil's katana. The most important part though was the fact that all 3 goddesses sensed the same thing about the swords. They remembered this feeling very well considering that swords of this kind were not actually that rare, not for them at least. Both Rebellion and Yamato were at this moment sentient swords. And the reason for this happening was obvious to all 3 of them. They could sense Virgil's soul fused together with Yamato, and Dante's soul with Rebellion. Kylina snickered and Death sighed as she spoke. Swords? Their own swords? Really? Kushina at least chose her son. Who the fuck can't leave their swords behind? It was Ophis though whose reaction was most interesting. She had a grin, a bloodthirsty grin, something which didn't suit the goddess part of her at all. But it was perfect for the dragon part of her, the one which favored only battle, carnage and destruction. Ophis focused a little and Rebellion changed and took the form of a scythe, and then changed back into its default form. These 2 will make fine weapons for my beloved dragon. Instruments worthy of my emperor. At this both Death and Kylina had similar smiles on their faces. Yes, they will. Humans such fickle creatures. So easily manipulated that one might wonder if they were waiting for someone to manipulate them. Tomorrow will be the day when Naruto will have to join the Shinobi Academy. Well, that is not actually true. The real reason is that they have waited long enough. Time for world to see Naruto in all his glory was fast approaching, and they have a board to set. It wouldn't do for Naruto to make an appearance, and not have an audience waiting for him, now would it? If one was thinking that Naruto was about to get all his enemies killed, weakened or trapped, or something like that, then they are horribly wrong. It is exactly the opposite. He needed the world ready and on its toes. Powerful and challenging. But some sacrifices needed to be made. What needed to be burnt to create a bonfire, and to amass the whole elemental nations together, the amount of wood needed will be considerable. The death of Uchiha clan will be the first step on that path. Almost 200 black snakes left the safety of Uzumaki compound. The horde would have scared anyone, but thankfully no one was there to see it. Too bad, no one will know what hit them, and it would be too late to do anything by the time they realized it. They all separated and went different ways. One of them saw a man walking and without weight sunk its fangs in his legs. The men didn't even notice, which was the most important part of the plan. He didn't even realize it as multiple seals and genjutsu were placed and removed from him. The snake followed the man as he went and joined a few of his friends in some dingy bar. The group talked and laughed at stupid things, and then a few minutes later the man spoke. Hey, listen, I'm not sure. I mean, it has been 9 years. But do you remember QB attack? Of course we do, that's th. Let me finish first. I was too busy running for my life towards the shelters, but I remember. For a moment I looked at it, and saw. Its eyes were not slitted. They had 3 comma patterns in them. The same pattern that there is when one is under Sharingan's genjutsu. Wait, are you saying that? And didn't they all said that Uchiha Madara put QB under genjutsu to control him? Listen, of course I might be wrong. I was just a 12-year-old child back then, and scared and running, but I believe there was a Sharingan pattern in the beast's eyes. All the men were silent and contemplating, then one of them spoke timidly. I think I remember it too. The snake nodded to itself and slithered away, going to find its next prey. They had till 5 a.m. tomorrow morning to spread the rumors as much as they can. Humans, such mentally weak creatures, the snakes didn't even actually do anything special. They just broke the genjutsu that was already on the people to make them forget about the Sharingan on QB's eyes. These humans will end up destroying each other on their own. Hindsight is a bitch, isn't it? Shut up, Kurama! Shut up, Kurama! Both mother and son shouted together at the smirking fox. The reason for their anger? Well, their plan worked too fucking well. The snakes, which were not actually real snakes but constructs created using seals, were spectacular success, and removed any and all genjutsu from anyone they bit, including the genjutsu that stopped people from making connection between Naruto and Minato's appearance, between Naruto and Uzumaki Kushina's name and behavior, and other such things. Unless of course they already knew of the fact. Well, it was not actually their fault. They didn't even have any idea about that genjutsu existing. Though now that they thought about it they should have. The inability of Konoha's people in making that connection was too damn fucking obvious. Naruto sighed loudly. They now had one less mental bomb to drop on people of Konoha, and he was so looking forward to seeing their expression of shock and horror. Not to mention at this he passed his fingers through his hairs and sighed. I wouldn't have tried so hard to change my hairstyle if I wanted to look like that filthy sperm donor. He put the thoughts of Minato behind him and focused on current predicament. There will be need for a little bit of adjusting, but he was sure that they could use this to their advantage. At least the people were still dumb and pathetic, and were probably thinking something like, "This cannot be," or "There's no was that the demon is Yandame's son," and things like that. If instead they suddenly started accepting him, loving him, or even worse calling him Yandame's honorable son, then he just might drop a meteor on them. "Dude, you've got issues?" Naruto sighed at that voice, coming from inside his sleeves. The swords were put inside seals that were drawn on insides of his sleeve. He had no idea how they could still talk. Yeah, sure, the seals were not stasis seal and just simple storage seal, but still they were literally in a pocket dimension. At first, when Ophis gave him those two swords, Rebellion and Yamato, he was ecstatic. Well, that was until, of course, Dante started speaking. The man was funny and all, but he just spoke so much. Naruto replied in an annoyed voice. As if you've got any right to say that. You hate your father just for being a demon. At least I'm not a hypocrite. You won't understand. I don't care if people hate me for something I didn't do. They are pathetic and their opinion are worth shit. But I can't take it if they praise or love me just for being born to that man. It's so frustrating that all the hard work was for nothing and that the reason you got accepted was because of who your father was, not for being yourself. Spoke Virgil solemnly. Naruto sighed and nodded. This is why he liked this guy. He was too damn intelligent and awesome. Oh well, no time to mope. And with renewed resolve, Naruto stepped forward and started falling down from the top of Hokage Mountain. He closed his eyes at the feeling of wind rushing down his face and enjoyed it. He could hear the screams of some people from down below and smirked. The people could only look in horror as someone fell down from the top of Hokage Mountain. Everyone got away from the point of impact in time, but not too far away, and thus they got painted in flesh and gore that splattered the ground. After 2 minutes of screaming, someone noticed something amiss. Soon everyone noticed it, and people started moving away and climbing walls to get a better look at it. And then their eyes widened and jaws clenched. For written in blood and flesh was one simple message. Uzumaki Naruto is back, bitches. From far away they heard someone shout, "Jackpot baby," but no one could tear the eyes away from that macabre display. And wondered what the future will bring them.